Anita,
we
indeed.
are. And I'm always excited to see what openings the players bring to the table. We have so many different types of narratives in the SEC, but I'll put all that aside because the games are off. The world champion with the white pieces, Danny, in game one, 1d4. I think we're going to see a
Yeah.
lot of different first moves by Magnus in this match. That's going to
You
be my
know,
prediction.
and I agree with you, and I think it's an interesting point you made because I think Magnus is going to be poking and prodding early. You see experienced players do that because they're trying to find those cracks in the armor, right? Where are the angles I can take against my young opponent who maybe doesn't have as well-rounded a repertoire as he will in 5 years from now, right? And so you see experienced players do that to see if they can even trick you in a move order, in a transposition where Magnus gets an advantage out of the opening.
And there's this idea that people sometimes carry around that quote unquote Magnus is not an openings guy. I can
Yeah.
I can attest that that is not the case, having played my share of blitz matches against him. Yeah, sometimes Magnus plays something a little bit offbeat to get a fresh position, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have tremendous opening preparation across all of the mainstream openings. And right here, we see him going straight into one of the most hotly contested openings in modern theory, the Nimzo Indian, and opting
Yep.
for a very solid continuation, the Rubinstein.
We saw him kind of shuffle there, not exactly sure what he was, maybe just talking to himself about the opening or frustrated about something. But like you said, we have a Rubenstein, Nimzo, and
Whoa!
ooh, and Earl. Wait,
That's a mouse slip.
was that a mouse slip?
That's got to be a mouse slip. I mean, if this is preparation, then I'm going to be speechless for the rest of the show. A4.
I don't think we want you speechless for the rest of the show. I'm speaking for the fans and the non-fans of myself. So we don't want you speechless. But that is, wow, that's interesting. I will say something super ominous, and obviously this is super early, Danya,
Yeah.
but I was the commentator in the 2021 Speedchess Championship where Magnus lost to Maxime. That was last
Mhm.
year, right? And I want you to know, Danya, that match started with an early mouse slip by Magnus Carlsen.
Really?
And
Okay.
it was weird because I remember me and Robert being like, "What is going on here?" I don't think I've ever seen Magnus mouse slip in an SCC. And anyway, that day obviously proved ominous. I'm not saying anything like that happens here, but that was just have to draw that in. I'm having this weird out of body deja vu right now.
Listen, you never know nowadays whether a move is a mouse slip or not. Earlier, you could bet pretty safely. Now, I mean, A4 and H4 are just regular occurrences in basically every opening, but I don't see any justification for weakening the P4 square like that. It's quite clear that Gukesh is flat out better out of the opening here, given his control over the B4 square. The idea of playing A3 and B4 is a very important component of White's plan in these lines. So
Yeah.
without it, Danny, Black is holding all of the cards here in the early going.
Yeah, I agree totally. So we'll see if that throwback or callback to what happened in that MVL matchup, the only Speedchess Championship match that Magnus Carlsen has ever lost, for those who didn't get that memo. Okay, but it's early. White is a little worse, but still, you're going to get castled. There's going to be a lot of chess ahead in this game. I think I always draw my attention to the clock, Danya, and just see that Gukesh is keeping pace at this point with the world champion. That's always a good sign when you're looking at the timer.
And Magnus, without question, over the last couple of years, has gotten a lot faster. He is not an easy guy to face in time scrambles. He might
Yeah,
not be as fast as Hikaru. Obviously, nobody is in time scrambles, but it's not like if Gukesh manages to get this down to 30 seconds for both players, he's necessarily going to stand to benefit. I actually don't think Magnus minds a bunch of these
yeah.
time scrambles, given Gukesh's relative lack of experience online. But yeah, you can see Magnus in kind of defense mode, going bishop a6. He wants to trade the bishops off. I think he's even happy to get away with a draw in game one here.
Yeah, he's getting rid of a potentially dangerous bishop on that long diagonal, kind of typical of these positions. It's sort of transposed from what was a Nimzo move order for those who might be just tuning in. Where have you been? Magnus is playing. Morpheus is fighting Neo. Let's go. Now it's a position that is a little bit tamer. It looks kind of like a Queen's Gambit declined or exchange kind of theory that we might have had here.
Yeah, and good squares don't win games. Just because Black holds the b4 square doesn't really mean that White's position collapses. Gukesh trying to make the most of his opportunity. The knight jumping into d3, but I think
Yeah.
Magnus doesn't need to overreact. Just rook a to b1, and then you can kind of nibble around the edges. You could play h3, make some lufts. Bishop e1 is a nice move, kind of forcing the trade. And Danny, if Magnus manages to untangle a little bit further here, he might start playing for the advantage. I mean, you have that c6 square. The idea of knight back to d4 could be unpleasant. The other knight, Catalan style, can jump into d3. I've seen Magnus win these kinds of games so many times. I mean, haven't we all?
Yeah. More times than any of his opponents would like to admit. I agree. We're back to a roughly 50-50 position. And again, it is a tame one, so we're not saying Gukesh is worst yet. But I like your idea of knight d4, knight c6, knight d3. And the problem here is, what exactly is Black's plan to prevent White from improving, right? Even though that computer says Black has a microscopic edge. Yeah, if I'm Gukesh, I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I might even just simplify this and not let Magnus think he's going to play for a win.
There's just so many decisions you make just on the basis of one observation alone, and that's who you're playing. I think bishop takes c1 is a move Gukesh probably wouldn't play against most other grandmasters, but I think it is a very
Right.
good practical decision against Carlsen as he activates his own knight. We might see knight b5 to d4. We might see rook a to c1, but at this point, I think Magnus is breathing a lot easier than he was after a4.
Yeah, I can't wait to discuss. Obviously, we'll see who wins. We usually have an interview after a match, and just ask Magnus early if he did indeed mouse slip that. Shout out to Tactics and Swindles. Great name, great name.
Tactics and Swindles.
All right, here
That's
we've
all
got
I
a pretty Tactics and Swindles. That's all I used to do. But not anymore. All right, man. Well, this looks like a pretty tame position. If White gets b4 though, and then b5. And then c6 is an anchor outpost square, and then a7 is weak. Come on, Danya, give me some highlights. There you go, baby. I love that.
There you go. Christmas colors there. I wanted red, though. Oh, there we go. Red is the basic color. B4 by Magnus, and the Magnus Whisperer strikes again. And the clock situation, Danny, he's up a nice solid 40 seconds. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Gukesh is just not an experienced online player, so it's just so easy to panic when you get, especially below a minute. I think that's the threshold when relatively inexperienced players sometimes start to panic online.
Yep. I agree. And you can already see the eval bar is an evil bar if you're Gukesh, because here comes an edge for White. And as highlighted, if b5 occurs and the knight pops on c6, even if objectively Black should still be okay, from a practical perspective, when you add time onto the clock, he's now down by 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Here comes Magnus.
And let's not forget about the move f3. That's a very nasty move here because the knight doesn't have any good squares. If it drops back to d6, that enables the move knight c6. And there's all sorts of tactics there with knight e7 check. I attempt number 4. Okay, there we go. And Danny, if the knight moves back to g5, you could toss it back even further with h4. I think Magnus is deciding right now between f3 or b5, and f3 is on the board.
You called it. F3 going to kick the knight back to d6 before maybe knight c6 happens immediately. So Gukesh is going to trade. Yeah, at this point, it's not necessarily panic mode, but it is Houston. We have a problem. Let's simplify this thing before bad things happen.
Yeah, and it's already amazing as early as game 1 how Magnus has transformed just a clearly worse position out of the opening, and not an unbalanced worse position, a worse position with a symmetrical pawn structure. And now you would never guess that he mouse slipped with a4 on like move 5. Like you would never be able to tell.
Yeah. That's why I can't wait. I mean, I know I'm with you that it was a mouse slip, but I'm like, I have this weird, I suffer from Magnus bias-itis. I never really know.
No, totally.
By the way, Queen d2 threatens, or it did maybe threaten knight takes a7 because the rook would have been overworked on d7, but Queen g5 hits e3, so Magnus has to defend that pawn.
Yeah, and you normally don't want to play f4 here and weaken the e4 square. You definitely don't want to give too many prospects to Black's knight.
Yeah.
But I mean, Magnus might decide on something a little bit more drastic given Gukesh's time situation. You could also see a move like rook to c3. If Gukesh can get the rooks off the board, I think he would love to do that. Given the fact that White's got these weaknesses.
I think we got to show the line you're showing if we want to bring up the analysis board. We have to show this sacrifice coming from Gukesh. Knight e4, potentially with queen takes e3 check. I think we got to show that. Knight e4, queen takes d. Oh, no, rook c3 wasn't played. Rook c2 was played.
Oh, rook c2 was played. But I think this illustrates the general idea, which is that White can go hunting for the queenside pawns, but e3 is always going to be a problem. But Danny, I think the idea of rook c2 is an antidote to knight e4. If you play it now, this looks very imposing, but after king f1, there are simply no checks. The rook's defending f2. Very important.
Yeah, so rook c2 does stop not just queen f2 mate, but if the king had gone to h1, the infamous Venus flytrap mating pattern. So that's what I wanted to show, was that Gukesh had an awkward threat there. But okay, it doesn't happen. Magnus plays rook c2. We see in the live position, Gukesh has offered a queen trade.
No, that's the worst thing to do against Magnus. You've got a
Yeah,
worse end game in game one. And again, look at the time. You've got 30 seconds to defend it. I don't know about this.
I'm with you, and I draw attention to the time control for those just tuning in. We got a long format ahead here. 90 minutes of 5 minute has just begun. We are only in the first game, but Gukesh under 20 seconds starts
Oh, and
to
he just
become
gave up a pawn.
its own enemy, the clock. You got two enemies now: the world champion and the clock.
And the third is the fact that you're a pawn down at a rook end game against the world champion. I think Magnus would be playing for a win with black here. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're the one down a pawn, Magnus is just going to kind of push his kingside pawns, maybe f5. There goes the second pawn. Oh, Gukesh is losing this. No way
I
you're
mean,
holding this.
objectively, yeah, it's it's hard to be in a lost rook ending against Magnus. But okay, Gukesh, he will get white right next game, and that'll be interesting to see what the youngster brought to the table in regards to preparation, because players don't hold back in this format.
Right.
You know, there's a lot at stake, and you see theory happen on deep levels in the SEC. I'm not saying this game's over yet, but I'm saying this
Not
game's
yet.
over.
I think a
I'm
couple
not
more
saying it's over,
moves.
but I'm saying
You're kind of saying it's over. Of course, Magnus, he screws these up about one time out of every 100. He's got plenty of time. Great time management in the end game. Uh-oh. Now it's over.
yeah,
Now
yeah.
he's just going after all the pawns. No. 2 seconds for Gukesh, and he's simply going to resign. What a game by Magnus. That's just like a classic, old school, grind it out world champion game right there.
Yep. Magnus, of course, will now take on the black pieces as they rematch. But no, that was why Magnus is Magnus, right? We expect this to be a tough one, an uphill battle, where inevitably in the end we will all be rooting for Gukesh if we want to see him keep it close. But right now, you're right. That was vintage Magnus, despite the mouse slip in A4, and despite my call out to the fact that when he lost the SEC matchup versus Maxime Bachet-Lagrave, he also started with a mouse slip. But that didn't happen here today. He wins the first game, and we are sitting here waiting for the next game to begin. So,
And the storyline beneath the storyline might be, will Magnus repeat A4 just out of spite, just to show the commentators, it may have been a mouse slip originally, but hey, this actually kind of works out. I mean, the greatest ideas in the world are generated
sometimes
in accidental ways.
the clock has officially been paused. We see Magnus discussing things with our team. Shout out to the team working super hard. There's a lot of people bringing this to you. Our producers, our broadcast team, but also the fair play team, the events operations team. Magnus obviously having a discussion with them in some way. Maybe there's something going on with the webcam or with his second cam. And bye, Magnus. Love you.
Yeah,
Call
or his
me. Call me
pizza
later.
delivery is running late.
What's going on with Magnus? So, all right. Well, this game is a game that, how do you get it out of your head if you're Gukesh, right? The storyline, Tanya, is he shows up, he has a good position out of the opening, but it doesn't
Hmm.
matter, because as we bring up our insights card and take our first parts of playing Magnus in a match, is that even when you have a game where you were better, if you don't convert, it eats at you, right? Where you go like, well, this is kind of hopeless. But like you said, focus on
Hmm.
the positive and lean into it, right? Like there's a few YouTube videos online where I played Magnus in some random blitz, and all I ever remember from that is that I drew one game. I don't tell
Hmm.
people that there are 6 other videos after that where I lost every game, right? You
What
just
what
focus.
videos?
Exactly. What videos are there? Just the first one.
Right.
So anyway, here we have an Italian, the first move on that note, switching to E4 from D4, and a symmetrical Italian until Magnus chooses the H6 variation. Ooh, and castles early. We could get a sharp one with white
Could get
committing castles. That
G5.
means, yeah, exactly.
Now, the one of the ideas of putting the knight on c3 is to meet g5 with an early knight d5, kind of striking at the center. White could go knight d5 here anyway. White could play this in traditional style with bishop b3, which Gukesh does. And, just a relatively unambitious opening setup by the Indian Grandmaster. Just sort of a regular Italian position. So
Yep.
popular these days.
Let's talk a little bit about that G5. It didn't happen, but that's kind of a modern way that black can look to spice things up if you are in a must-win situation, right? White castling early and black playing H6, not just to prevent bishop G5, but to play G5. That's not happening here, but that is an idea we might see later on in this match if they keep playing this position.
Yeah, we might even see the move g5 with the king castled kingside. The fact that the king is on g8 doesn't always preclude black from pushing g5, especially if you could ensure that a knight appears on g6 and a queen appears on f6 shortly thereafter. Knight d5 by Gukesh. So normally black's reaction here is to take on d5, and then to meet bishop takes d5, Danny, with this knight e7, knight g6 maneuver. But Magnus taking a little bit of time. Maybe he's thinking about bishop e6 to keep the tension.
Okay. And this is definitely theory for those looking to improve their repertoire or map anything out. This is a symmetrical Italian kind of four knights idea, but there's a lot more than meets the eye. That's why Magnus is pausing. Want to make sure he gets the right shuffling in here to be fair. And I think that Gukesh, we asked the question, Danya, what will he have prepared for this match? What do you bring to the battlefield when you're prepping for a world champion? It might be an Italian. I like his position right now so far after the first 10 or so moves.
Yeah, and Gukesh has been so impressive in the opening phase in his last couple classical tournaments. Of course, none of us will ever forget his performance in the previous Olympiad. Fabiano Caruana-esque, kind of a repetition of that Singfield Cup. I think he started 8 out of 8 and only lost the next game by miracle. That was amazing, and that really put Gukesh on many players' radars. I'm a little bit surprised that Magnus took on e3, which is oftentimes a concession when the rook is on f1 aiming at the f7 pawn. But Carlsen decides, I think, that there are just not enough minor pieces here for white to really whip anything up on the king side. Okay, reasonable.
Yeah, makes sense. Normally in these positions with the f-file open, white can slide with queen e1 and over to that side of the board. But like you said, with pieces being traded, both the knight and bishop, unlikely white is really mustering up something scary on the king side. Is that what you're saying? Asking for a friend.
That is. But I would play queen e1 anyway. I like this idea. Queen e1, queen g3, and then maybe knight h4, knight f5, which you often see in these lines. Queen d2 by Gukesh, kind of taking the more slow roll approach, asking Magnus, what he wants to do with this bishop on d5. We could see bishop takes d5 at any moment, but I think white's going to take back with the c-pawn and maybe even start playing on the queen side with an attack against that c7 pawn, which is going to be a backward pawn in the event of the trade.
I was going to say, on that note, what is black's strategy? Are you thinking about taking d5, or are you trying to get white to blink first? Some maneuver where you move the knight from c6 in order to play c6 yourself and force white to capture on e6. What is black's plan? Obviously, moving the knight might lose the b7 pawn. So again, asking for a friend, teach me what you know about this position.
Normally, I'd say the idea is to get white to flinch first. Here, I would seriously contemplate taking on d5, and that's because of the presence of the b4 square. Magnus goes knight b4 immediately. I thought about this, but I didn't see exactly what the idea is in response to bishop takes b7 and then back to d5. Because if we pull up an analysis board, Danny, really quickly, I think Gukesh should take on b7. The idea is that you can't, maybe you can try bishop d7 with the idea of c6. I was worried about it.
I was just going to say, there's no sacrifice on f7? What do you mean there's no sacrifice, computer? I hate you. It's good for black.
Me too. You just drop it back and you stare your opponent in the face and you say you have no follow-up here. You have
this
3
is what
pawns.
Magnus... Oh my gosh. This is what Magnus has already looked at. We see in the live position right below our cameras here that Gukesh hasn't taken yet, but here he does take on b7. He goes for it. No, but Magnus doesn't go for bishop d7. He decides it is just a pure pawn sacrifice.
No, and that's not a good thing for Magnus. He doesn't have enough compensation. I mean, the knight is sitting pretty on b4, but kind of a strange sequence of decisions for the world champion. He takes a lot of time, and this is a big chance for Gukesh in the early going, Danny. I don't want to overstate the case here, but you've got to try to deliver if you're white.
No, I don't think we're going to be overstating the case at all throughout the whole day if we're saying this is a big moment for Gukesh, because you might not get many. You've got to take them, right? You don't swing at the king and miss, as they say. And so I agree. I mean, you can't miss with an opportunity where you've won a pawn. Magnus obviously has some compensation on the b file. Maybe we should highlight that, as well as the b2 pawn being backward. And here he comes with the swing to double the rooks. Makes sense. But if you're Gukesh, I think I'm going to give one piece of random advice into the universe. He won't be able to hear me, but I think the main thing is you can't overthink this, Daniel. What we often see here is now he's going to try to be perfect and convert and get himself under time pressure, and somehow Magnus wins his black. We see people do that against Hikaru and Magnus. I think you got to trust yourself and try to play quickly, not trying to be too precise, because it is blitz.
Agree completely. He's been doing that so far. I love the way Gukesh is handling this so far. Rook ac1. Mysterious looking move, but the idea is an antidote to d5. In the event of d5, you take it, and then your rook sits on a lovely open file. Now Gukesh says, hey, I don't care about the pressure on the b file. I'm going to checkmate you on the king side. Maybe even a move like rook f3 and pile up those pieces while black's pieces are scattered about the queen side.
I agree totally. And I think that might be, to me, if I was giving the practical advice, bird on the shoulder, that's what you go for, Danya, because you have to take your chances when you get them, and you can't be afraid to go all in, right? Because you may not get another opportunity. Here he goes. I love this.
Oh,
Queen f2, Queen g3. Let's go on the king side.
whoa, that is a sacrifice. Magnus doesn't take on d3. I thought rook f3 might have been a more precise way to start. Magnus follows up with g6, and is Gukesh just going to leave the knight on f5? That is a common sacrifice in these Italian positions. For now, he goes queen g3, pinning the g-pawn. And is Magnus going to duck away onto h7?
But what about knight takes d3? We're going to have to bring back the analysis board, but just to show the obvious lines, because this game is about to get tricky. So if black plays knight takes d3, white has what?
I think just rook cd1.
Okay, and d6 is hanging in the end.
And you could play rook b3 here, but then you lose sight of the f7 pawn. This gets really nasty for black.
Yeah.
So Magnus does indeed play king h7.
Yeah, stopping knight h6 and maybe renewing eventual threats.
Spicy stuff by Gukesh. He just says, hey, Magnus, take my knight. You're going to get ladder checkmated.
I love that move. If you take gf5, rook f5, here comes checkmate on the edge of the board. This is the kind of game, if you're writing up the storybook upset, Rudy takes down Notre Dame. Or what happened in that movie? Did he go to Notre Dame or did he beat Notre Dame? Any Hooters. Okay, so if you're writing the Rudy story, it starts with this type of chess by Gukesh. I know he went to Notre Dame. Calm down. Calm down, everybody.
No, that's a fantastic move. And Danny, it's not just a defensive move. He's preparing to blast open the center with the move d4. And that pawn on d6, that queen on d8. Magnus is falling apart at the seams here. And he's got 45 seconds. Let's see how Gukesh follows this up.
I'm going to say that's the other thing that you get excited about is on the clock. I love this move d4. I love that you have to put pressure. Magnus is maybe going to be under 30 seconds here in just a moment.
Yeah, but this is where the world champion. But this is where the world champion is so resilient. He just does not die. It doesn't matter how much time he has on his clock. He's going to make Gukesh work for it. And I love how Gukesh is just keeping his knight on f5. It can never be captured as long as the queen sits on g3, cutting off the king.
I love it. I love it. We asked the question when we were reviewing the insights there, what does Gukesh do to get Magnus in tactical positions? That's a type of position Gukesh might want. This is the kind of game you're looking for. This is exactly what you need. Magnus now under 20 seconds. Where's the beef, Gukesh? You got to deliver.
Yeah, where's that crushing blow? Magnus is still pretty solid on the king side. Gukesh continues to pile up his pieces, doubling on the f-file. 10 seconds now for the world champion. And Danny, I mean, d takes c5 and queens. Oh, no, there's got to be a knockout here. I think just knight h6.
Got to be a knockout.
No,
knight h6. Is knight takes d6 an option?
Queen takes d6. Not totally sure.
And then rook takes f7. There's also just move the knight anywhere, like even h4, because if the queen goes to e6, then you can play d5 and keep the pressure.
Although then the
is there a move like c5?
Danya, is there a move like c5? Best. I think you're calling it. I think c5 is totally crushing Danny, because then you play d takes c5 and put the knight on d6. I think c5 ends and he finds it.
He goes for it. Gukesh finds it. 7 seconds for the champ. Oh, and he's all in now. He's like, well, might as well take now.
Rook h5, rook g5, 1-0.
It's over. It's over.
Oh, my lands. What a game.
Gukesh says, not so fast. Go and brush your shoulder off, youngster. It's a match, baby. Not so fast, everyone.
Yeah, and Magnus, I mean, his body language kind of indicates frustration.
Yeah.
What a comeback win for Gukesh. That was amazing. And he got exactly the type of position he needed to get. Exactly the type of position. A sharp Italian with attacks on either side of the board, Danny. And he played with nerves of steel. He had a minute left at the end of the game. So impressive.
I'm absolutely not necessarily blown away, because I believe that Gukesh can do this. Oh my gosh, is this going to be the most exciting draw ever? Remember, Danya, we commentated on the most. No, it's not the most exciting draw.
This is brilliant. I've never seen this before. There's a rook on e5, Danny.
Oh my god, look at the position. The pawn's symmetrical. The pawns are symmetrical.
But have you ever seen a rook on e5 on move 9? This is amazing. Oh, it's no longer on e5.
I've never seen a rook on e5. I've seen an elephant fly, though, and this is a symmetrical pawn structure where everybody's equal.
Wow. I can't get over that. Game was so impressive. But here's the thing, Danny. If you're Gukesh, unfortunately, you're going to have to repeat that for another 3 hours. So can you do that? But still, he's got something to hang his hat on, even if the match doesn't go his way. That was an amazing game.
Yeah. That was an amazing game. Clip it and ship it. Damaraju Gukesh strikes back, says this will not be a runaway. He's already half a point away from equaling Smarter Chess's prediction in the 5-minute time control. You got to give him that. And I mean, seriously, we know this is an uphill battle. We know that we're going to be adding drama. So fans, forgive us for that. But the reality is, if we're talking about a storyline, which is our job to try to predict, what does Gukesh have to do with his style? What does he have to do to lure the world champion into some sort of deep, dark forest where he loses his way? It has to be great preparation, Danya, which he had in the Italian, tactical positions, as the insights showed, and then you have to deliver when it matters, under time pressure, and that's what Gukesh did. So, again, obviously it's early, but that's the kind of game you want to see if you're hoping for a close match.
Yeah, and you want to catch Magnus in those casual moments. You know, Magnus doesn't seem too concerned. He's snacking. It's still so early in the match. I mean, nothing has happened yet. But
Yeah.
again, it's all about the confidence booster, right? If you're Gukesh, hey, I can beat the world champion. I can outplay him. And I didn't just benefit, let's say, from a mouse slip. I outplayed him fair and square that game. You got to carry that confidence forward for the rest of the match. And right here, we've got a really interesting position, Danny. Magnus is down a pawn, but he's kind of buried the bishop on c8 under a pile of rubble. How is Gukesh going to get his queen side out?
Well, and this is a typical kind of thematic sacrifice we see for white in these Berlins now. Maybe talk about that for the more advanced, astute fans out there to talk about the dynamics, because we see white doing this in this variation of Berlin, taking the opportunity to add dysfunction to the queen side in exchange for the pawn. And what exactly does black need to do? You have to get b6 and bishop b7, but when you do, there's tactics like queen e4. You highlighted it before. I can save it. We're completing each other's
sandwiches. You see,
Makes
I
me so
learned,
happy.
Danny. I learned.
Yep. Robert has just got so jealous wherever he's sitting. He just got so jealous. Anyway, so yeah, exactly that. This is a difficult spot for black, and that's what Magnus is trying to go for. And the bishop pair notwithstanding, white does have the edge here.
Yeah, what bishop pair? Gukesh
Well,
giving
not
away his
anymore.
dark squared bishop. And
Yeah.
he did that for one reason only, in order to be able to play b6. You called it, there was queen e4.
Yep.
On the immediate b6. Now, black is worse here. There's no question about it. White can basically win the pawn back on demand. If white suddenly gets the hankering to restore material equality, you can go rook d1 and queen d3 and whatnot. But I think Magnus is going to go for more. And Magnus could still play against the bishop with a move like bishop d5 and then c4. Black will develop to a6, but that doesn't solve all of his problems.
I was just gonna ask for a friend and suggest bishop d5. I love that move. Here comes c4, like you said, the bishop remains in a cage. What you really want, if you're Magnus, is to somehow get the rook to e1, right? If rook e1 wasn't met with queen takes e1 back ring checkmate, that would be overwhelming the lady on e7, because look at the queen and bishop ganging up on the f7 pawn. That's exactly what black has to worry about. So if you're Magnus, how do you create pressure against that queen on e7 so you can do work with the attack?
Yeah, that's the right question to ask. You basically need to open up a second front. I think the long-term plan for Magnus is first to play c4, make some luft on the king side so you don't have the headache of the back rank mate, and then try to get the rook around, maybe via d4, either to e4 or to f4. And as you said, gang up on that f7 pawn, gang up on black's queen. I don't know how Gukesh is going to deal with that. He plays a5. I would be very worried about just like h3 and rook d1, and that's very Magnus style as well.
Yeah, Magnus taking a moment to ensure it. I think the one thing is, if we bring up the analysis board, the one thing black has is that bishop a6, if it's met by c4, black will strike with b5, right? And that's the move that opens up the rook on b8 and tries to get some counterplay. So if h3, bishop a6, c4, b5, black is getting that play, and there is still no rook e1 because it's checked. So again, I'm just an international master sitting in for a grandmaster friend, but this looks like you can see black is starting to come to life here. So that's why Magnus is pausing. This isn't just a cakewalk at this point.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point. And one idea very much up Magnus's alley would be to play c4, bishop a6, and then a4, precisely to prevent b5 and to open up a pathway for the rook to e3. So, you know, you're doing a bunch of things at once, and I don't even have to make these moves on the analysis board. It's on the real board. He's played it. Oh, no, he's played a4. Yeah.
A4 first, yeah.
And there we go.
And now he goes c4. So you were right that it was going to be on the main board soon. Just like we're going to see a lot of cash paid out. Reminder for the fans just tuning in. We got 18,000 plus of you already on Twitch. I guess people like watching the world champion play Rising Stars from India. I don't know. They didn't
Why
show up
would
for me, okay? They probably showed up for you, but I think they showed up for the world champion and for the rising star from India. Welcome to the SCC. We got a long day ahead. So,
nice pawn structure for black? Black's got a long day ahead in this endgame.
gosh, this is like one of those. I feel like I was given an example as a kid by some, Russian trainer I had that said, let's imagine the worst pawn structure black could ever have in the universe. And then they
Yep.
set up a position pretty similar to this. Isolated pawn on h7. Highlight with me, Danya. Doubled isolated f pawns, double isolated d pawns. These are pawns only a mother could love.
These are, I like it. And you're never going to go b5 ever as long as you're alive. So Magnus just has carte blanche here on the king side. You can go rook d3, d4, whatever, h3, f3. Literally put the rook on any file and it's going to be good.
I just threw up in the back of my throat a little bit. If you don't mind, I'm going to grab some of my really cold coffee that's been sitting here.
That's for like weeks. Bishop b7, though. I like how Gukesh is approaching this thus far. Get the bishops off the board first. That's step one. And Danny, you're probably going to have to give up at least one of your pawns if you're Gukesh, but you are up a pawn, technically. I know it sounds crazy. Wait, am I counting correctly? It's hard to count black's pawns.
It is hard to count because they're that bad. But let's also draw attention that Magnus wasn't happy about whether he missed bishop b7 or not. He definitely believes that this maneuver of the bishop not being stuck on a6 now on c6 is an improvement for Gukesh, I think, based on his reaction.
And the eval bar believes that as well. And Gukesh, he's not just sitting back and being passive. Rook g8, inducing the move g3. And I think he's activating his rook via g5. There we go. And Danny, if Magnus throws in h4, that looks like a no-risk kind of move. But guess what? That stops your rook from coming to h4. And h7 becomes relatively invulnerable.
Well, I was going to highlight the same thing on f4. F4 also looks like a no-brainer move, but if the rook backs up, you've also cut off your rook swing over. Although if black plays rook h5 here and white plays h4, that rook is running out of squares. So I think you have to be a little careful now if you're Gukesh. Is Magnus going to play f5? Okay, no, not anymore. Gukesh goes in for rook h5, but I wondered if the rook backed up, whether we'd see f5.
So no, I think we might see f5. Magnus is going to take back with a pawn, unless rook takes d5 is a draw for, I think, the pawn endgame.
Wait, is it? Does the king run d3, c4, b5? Okay, no, it's a draw. You're right. Okay.
It's actually not that straightforward, though. You're right, because the king has these two different pathways on both sides of the board. Magnus was thinking about it. He takes with a pawn.
Okay.
And now I think he's going to make a mad dash for b5. But Gukesh says, hey, I can just go rook h6, rook g6.
Nobody
can. This weakness on g3.
The rook will fall back to d3. This seems like a big improvement. If white is king d3, rook h6, king c4, rook g6, rook d3, white gets there in time. Is this really what Gukesh wanted?
Oh, yeah. That actually can get really hairy. So maybe after king d3, you should prioritize getting your king to b7. Maybe that's the fortress. And then Magnus is going to try to infiltrate the e-file. Yeah, there's some meat on the bone here for sure.
When you say fortress, I hear Magnus's quote. He doesn't believe in no fortress. He's a flat earther when it comes to fortresses. Am I allowed to say that? Is that politically correct? Anyway, moving on. We don't have a fortress if you're a Magnus fan.
I don't know. B4 also is a move. I don't know. 58 seconds, though. Carlsen taking a long thing here. I think he's trying to decide whether it's even worth making an attempt. Because you could risk turning this game around. You're still down a pawn.
Okay, he goes for it. I think Magnus will risk it. He likes those biscuits. Here it comes. I actually really like your point of b4. Wait, I think okay, it's not b4 now. Now it's the line we were talking about. There must be something concrete, similar to the rook switching to the e-file, like you already highlighted.
And that's what Gukesh forgot about. He had to get his king to b7. Now, rook c4 is just ending the game. Magnus is such a devil in these endgames. It's crazy.
And he takes a sip of that Isklar water. Shout out to Magnus's sponsors, Isklar. Just like that's a confident swig. We always say, what is the psychology? You only drink water when you're winning or happy. Is that what your buddy Peter G says?
That's exactly what he says. And I think that's wildly accurate. Like 99% of the time. Is you don't feel like drinking water if you're losing. And it's over. Rook c3 next.
Wow.
You're losing both of your queenside pawns. Oh, that is a heartbreaker there, Danny, after such a good defensive effort.
Let's let this next game start if we can quickly show the fans. I think for a
Yeah,
lot of people, where that ends is a little bit like you feel like you're worried. Where's the food? Right? I'll feed you, baby birds. Let's bring up an analysis board when we can and show why that position was so lost. Because after King B8, I think White has to find a really subtle Rook C3, Danya, to show exactly why Black is completely busted. So
that's
when we have
exactly
a
right.
second,
I'm going to pull it up
we'll show
here.
that. Yeah.
Okay. See, there we go. So, yeah, you might say, hey, black is up a pawn in the final position. But as
Yeah.
you're pointing out, Danny, after the king drops back, we can bring up an analogy. Yeah, rook
Yeah.
c3. You ain't
Yeah.
increasing the pressure on this pawn. And white's just going to collect these 2 pawns. And
And I think
that's it.
it's important to show this because it's not every day Black resigns in a rook ending up a pawn. Let that sink in.
Exactly.
White played rook c4 check, and Black resigns in a rook ending up a pawn. And so I think showing this is really instructive. This move rook c3, guard c3, and the house crumbles.
The house crumbles.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And just really quickly before we move on, the actual mistake for Gukesh was this move, rook h6. Wrong
Yes.
priorities. He had to go king d8, king c7, and just in time you reach b7, and on the next move you work on your rook. But he can be
Yes.
forgiven. That's hard to figure out, at the drop of a hat with less than a minute against the against the Carlsen.
Well, here Gukesh will now get the white pieces again as we focus our attention once more on game 4. Hey, knock on the door. Rhyme time all day. Welcome to the SCC. It's the main event. As we said, 16 players are in a knockout. They're moving on for big prizes. Of course, if we get a tiebreaker, ultimately we have 1+1 for 4 games, and then Armageddon. If you missed Aronium winning in Armageddon, you haven't been watching the most exciting event since Sudden Death Dodgeball, and that's the SCC.
Yeah, go back and watch it, but only after this match because plenty of entertainment left. Magnus back to a 1-point lead and a very kind of gritty positional battle here in this Rosalimo with both players pushing their pawns on either side. Magnus trying to drive the pawn up to a4. Danny, I think, to restrict the mobility of this knight and prevent knight b3. So maybe Gukesh should play this move while he still can.
It's funny. I always struggle in these positions as Black, as a Sicilian player, when you face a Rosalimo, because it just feels like it's only a matter of time before there's doubled C pawns are the focus of the game. It's like being on the
Mm-hmm.
white side of a Nimzo, right? So help me understand what tension, what dynamics is Black trying to keep so that now, because B3, there's going to be Bishop A3. And at some point, Black's going to play Rook C1. And then if there's threats of C takes D5, where C5 is hanging, Black has to do something, or those doubled C pawns become the focus.
Yeah, and I'll preface by saying that I don't play the e6 Rosalimo with black precisely because these structures are really, really challenging. And I think purely objectively, white's probably better. But black's got some things going for him on the other side of the board. First of all, this pawn chain is very, very strong. It's restricting the knight on f3. You've got the bishop pair. And at some point in the future, if you can get your knight somehow to f4, that's going to be a huge game changer because then you're going to be able to apply pressure on d3. Of course, that's easier said than done. And that's
Yep.
precisely why Gukesh got his pawn to h5. I think a lot of people are like, oh, he's attacking. No, the pawn at h5 is fulfilling a purely defensive role. So you sometimes actually see black pushing g5 to try to induce en passant. Instead, Magnus taking the alternate route. I don't know exactly where he's going, though, Danny.
Yeah.
If I'm Gukesh, I'm just going bishop a3, and I'm saying, hey, what's your plan?
And again, I've played the Nimzo Indian for my entire career as Black, and this is a similar structure you see where Black has parted ways with the bishop pair in a Nimzo in order to get these long-term weaknesses. And here comes bishop a3. As we said, rook to c1 will at some point be on the board. Whether you take right away or not on d5, White has this constant threat of cashing in, and that might force Black to play d4, exactly. But if d4 comes, White can continue to maneuver and eventually try to capitalize against these double pawns. But maybe d4 ultimately is forced, and at the very least, White doesn't have a clear way to bring another attacker, right?
Ooh, I'm surprised. I thought d4 is at this point kind of a no-brainer, and now he plays it. And
Okay, now he does it,
yeah, he waited for Gukesh to put his rook on c1 because now the rook kind of just looks dumb.
But I think the eval bar was revealing that Gukesh maybe missed a chance to take d5. I wonder if, because now that d4 has been played, Black is actually back in control. So again, for those who played this opening, or maybe some of our more advanced audience, you can back up and look at that. I think there's a lot of theory, a lot more subtlety there than maybe first meets the eye. And Magnus didn't hesitate to play d4 instantly when he had the second chance.
And I think the nature of Gukesh's misevaluation, he thinks that by playing d4, Black is kind of untying White's hands for
Yeah.
action on the king side. The problem is black is the one who's in charge on the king side. Even though white has more space right now and white has the more obvious maneuvers, black will eventually put queen d7 castles, and eventually black is going to have ideas of f5 and ideas of bishop g4. So
Yeah.
let's see who ultimately takes charge on the king side. That's where the battle is going to shift starting now. I would play knight h4 without delay if I'm Gukesh.
Agreed. Knight h4 before we even think about remaneuvering the knight on d2.
Yep.
Have they forgot about castling, Mr. Chunky? It's a funny question, but to be real about it, you might not only not see castling, it's possible you see black tuck the king on c7 even on the other side of the board and then completely shift everybody to a kingside expansion. I see Danya's eyebrows raising despite that early in the morning. I know you like what I'm preaching here.
I totally like what you're preaching. We're speaking the same language here, eating the same sandwiches. I think both kings might find their way to the queen side. But Danny, if white brings his king to c1, that pawn on b3 isn't entirely safe. I mean, there could be a sacrifice. We're talking like way down the line right now, but that's what you got to do. When the center is closed, you're switching from concrete calculation to more conceptual reasoning because it's hard to calculate concretely. There's just so many candidate moves on every move. And I think that's reflected in their time usage.
Ooh. Agreed.
Bishop c1.
Still a lot of pieces on the board for the time that is ticking away for these players. I kind of like the idea, as you're highlighting, of bringing the bishop to d2. But
Danny Carlsen.
On that note, Danny Carlsen striking, Magnus listening to my ideas. He's always listening to my ideas. He's going to put the king on c7, and then he's going to try to advance on the king side.
The one asterisk, he might go king c8 also to keep contact between the queen and the pawn. Sorry, go ahead.
Ooh, look at this. He's going to bring the knight to b4, which blocks the bishop's gaze on the a-pawn. That's a timely little maneuver there from that pony, making like a Luka Doncic Euro step. You know that when you do the Euro step in the NBA, it's basically moving like a knight? I thought about that the other day.
Kind of in an L shape. I can see that. I can get behind
you're doing
that.
2 steps that looks like a travel, probably is a travel, but now that they haven't called it for 10 years, they can't start now. You know what I'm talking about, the Euro step. Well,
they only call it when Steph Curry does it, but not when Luka Doncic and James Harden does
here we
it.
go.
Steph Curry has the worst whistle in the NBA. But anyways.
Wow. Are you literally going to say Steph Curry has the worst whistle in the NBA? Oh, my gosh.
Of all the superstars,
how many championships do you have before you can complain?
He's won them in spite of his whistle.
Oh, my gosh. All right, moving on. We are not going to get into this. All right, bishop f7. That allows a diagonal.
A double take on g6, though. Isn't there tactic? Can't you win a pawn?
Let's show it. To the back cave we go. Analysis board. HG, HG, knight g6, bishop g6, queen g4, baby girl. Oh, wait. Wait, what?
Yeah, I just took
on h1 no, it's still good for white.
Yeah, just to show that the knight on h1 doesn't impact the mechanism. Did Magnus overlook that? And Danny, this is where something you said is so important. I think Gukesh has to do this quickly. You got to not overthink it and just trust. Yeah, Magnus missed this tactic. Don't drop yourself down to 20 seconds before you do it anyway.
Yep.
And he's gone queen g4 first.
That's a big difference because now if you take on g6, maybe black has rook g8. Oh, queen g8. I was thinking rook g8, but queen g8. Okay.
Either. Yep. I think big missed opportunity there. Gukesh just could have won a pawn. Now I think Magnus could go queen g8 anyway. And this is just a paper tiger. I mean, you don't have any way to increase the or this. You can never take on g6 anymore.
And this is exactly what you're saying. I think that in hindsight, when young players look at those opportunities again, and maybe that's why a guy with more experience like MBL was the only person ever to oust Magnus from the SEC, because he's played Magnus enough where he's like, look, I know you're better than me, but if you blunder, I'm not going to be afraid to call your BS, so to speak, right? I think young players second guess, and that was a clear tactic that we all saw very quickly, and Gukesh misses a chance to cash in, and it'll probably bite him if Magnus comes back and wins this game.
Although I do really, really like his last move, f4, fearless play on the king side. Magnus meets him at the top with f5, and we're about to see some major fireworks on the king side. G takes h5 is his idea, and then I think he's going to take on f4. Obviously, the queen is hanging, so you can't take the knight.
Wow. Wild stuff. Knight takes f4. This position is about to blow open.
But
who's Who's better than this? I know the eval bar is sitting there saying, "Oh, White's still going to be better," but from a practical point of view, I mean, I've about called you Magnus. Am I wrong to start feeling more nervous for White? That queen on d8 spies the knight on h4. That king on e1 is completely naked there. The emperor has no clothes.
Yep.
I'm much more nervous to be White here than I am to be Black, despite what the engine is saying.
Totally, and Gukesh has to trade as many pieces as possible because positionally Black is worse. That bishop on f7 is a granite biter. It's biting on granite on one side and on the other side, although bishop takes c4 is a potential tactic in some cases because the rook on b2 is undefended. So I think objectively it's probably about balanced, and Gukesh has gotten this into a time scramble. Rook to e3. Oh, what a move by Magnus.
He sacrifices the exchange. The eval bar says White's better, but I'm looking at that pressure. This is where blunders happen. You ever wondering the bumper sticker, blunders happen? Blunders happen right here when you've got your king in the middle of the board.
But Gukesh keeping his composure, giving up the pawn on b3. And Danny, his idea was to prevent the bishops traveling to d4. White is now objectively much better. I don't see enough compensation here for the world champion.
That's surprising. Surprising if Magnus didn't have a concrete follow-up. That's not totally his style.
Yeah.
I think
rook b1 maybe. Ooh, he goes for the queen trade. I would take him with rook e3.
Do it. Oh, he doesn't. He plays knight f3, but taking and rook e3 was good.
No,
even so now, the queen's come off. There's two passed pawns in the middle of the board. Let's go, e5.
No, but Gukesh should have taken with a rook on e4. He gave up that pawn on c4, and he let the bishops get active, and now bishop e3 and bishop d3.
Wait, what?
Oh,
Wait,
he blundered.
Is he blundering the mating net?
Yep, bishop e3.
Oh, dude, rook b1, rook f1 was mate.
Oh my god, that was mate in two. You called it.
Rook b1, rook f1 was mate.
And he's going to have it again. He has it again.
Rook b1, rook f1.
Yeah, but bishop e3 is winning too. Just rook a1, rook a1. I'm surprised Magnus missed it. But
what in the world just happened there?
Okay. Oh my god.
Was rook b1, rook f1 mate? It was.
It most certainly was. It most certainly was.
Okay, it's just, you know, when I'm seeing mates on the board, you have to be like, Danny, you're crazy, or I mean, okay,
you're definitely not crazy.
we see it ultimately. We do see it ultimately go Magnus Carlsen's way. He wins that game, has a 2-game lead to start the first half here of our 5-1 portion. And I'm got to catch my breath. John, you take it away.
Oh my God, I'm still processing what just happened there. Magnus with the unsound exchange sack. Gukesh refuted it perfectly, Danny. And I thought he was going to win when the queens are about to get traded. I think his mistake there was to trade queens in the wrong version. He let Magnus's bishops get too active. And I think the main concrete mistake was, remember when he recaptured the queen with his D pawn? That let the light squared bishop get active. And that was the reason Magnus didn't have enough comp in the first place, is because his light squared bishop was bad. Once they got active, things got very difficult from a practical standpoint. A heartbreaker for the Indian prodigy there.
Completely agree. Magnus is eating a banana. Does that mean it's banana time for all of us?
I don't.
Magnus put more than half a banana in his mouth right there. That was that was banana time for all of it. We're all doing it.
Oh my God! You just like unfurled. You just uncorked a random banana that you just had next to you.
I always have bananas around in case Magnus says it's snack time. If Magnus eats a banana, everyone eats a banana. Hey, everybody at home, go get yourselves a banana. Good potassium, great for you. Thank you, Magnus, for that.
What if Magnus pulls out a dragon fruit? Do you have that nearby too?
You don't know what I have in the studio. Let's just say it's a bag of tricks. Not more than Beth Harmon wigs hanging around here. All right. So we have another Berlin, a different move order than what we saw in game 2. It was game 3. No. Yes, it was game 3. The second time Magnus had white. If you're just tuning in, Magnus started the match with d4, switched to a Berlin in game 3, and now in game 5, we see another Berlin for the world champion. I like to keep track of the storyline of what the openings are. Kind of tells us maybe sometimes what we're going to see, Danya, as the time controls get faster. We said Magnus would try different things. He would poke around. We've seen d4 and e4 played.
Yeah, and I actually think this is a huge game because in the blink of an eye, it's now a 2-point lead. That was a 2-point swing right there. Gukesh wins the game. It's still a tied match. A draw here would go a very long way towards stabilizing things going into the halftime break of the 5-1 portion. A loss and the train, the Magnus train will start to leave the station.
Talk about how hard that is as a player. You played chess at a pretty high level in your career, Donnie. I don't know if you knew that. You're pretty good at chess. How hard is it?
Eh.
It always sounds easier said than done to say stop the bleeding, right? That's the phrase we were both given by our Soviet trainers. You don't want to lose more than a couple games in a row, but psychologically, you want to win when you're down 2 games. So how hard is that to gather yourselves, make the disciplined decision, which is you're black and you need a draw despite being down 2 games, just focus on what's in front of you.
It's super hard. And again, I want to be more sparing in my sports references, but I really think this is a good analogy. You see basketball teams when they get down, the less disciplined teams just start jacking up really bad shots. They start shooting 3-pointers, and they don't run their plays because they're trying to do everything at once. And it's so easy to try to do the same thing in chess. The other problem, Danny, is in a Swiss tournament, when you lose a game, you normally get an easier opponent. The hardest tournaments to come back from are matches and tournaments like the U.S. Championship, where you lose a game against Onishok and you get Hikaru Nakamura in the last round.
Right.
Here, you lose a game against Magnus Carlsen, and in the next round, you get Magnus Carlsen. And after that, you get Magnus Carlsen again.
Hey, who do you get after that?
I don't know.
Maybe like Magnus Carlsen.
No, that might be the case, yeah.
You're right. It's the definition of out of the frying pan into the fire, right? Playing a match against someone like Magnus Carlsen. And so, it is something that I think chess players, it's one of the last muscles chess players really develop, which is that kind of emotional discipline, putting the prophylaxis, kind of the smart, unbiased decisions ahead of what you want to do as a human. But you're right. I think Gukesh getting a draw here, heading into the halftime break, as we call it, for the first 90 minutes of the 5-minute portion, probably the smartest thing he can do. Doesn't want to go down 3 games. And
but he's in trouble. Again.
But he's in trouble. Yep.
He's just flat out. And look at this position. The knight is pinned. If you have to take on d2, White's bishop is so strong in the open board. Bishop c3, bishop takes g7 is a threat. Ugh.
Yep.
This is nasty.
Yeah, the knight can't move because the queen on d7 is hanging. For those wondering what the pin is there, and that's a problem because bishop c3 is coming. Also, h4, h5 is on the agenda, where you start to see White mounting pressure from both the king side pieces and the queen side pieces. Is when you have a problem, and that's there's more than meets the eye in a symmetrical pawn structure. We kept talking about why Gukesh was playing for a draw. Maybe we were taking for granted that that's because he was playing in Berlin, and that is a position where usually Black has decent holding chances. But this is not the kind of Berlin you want. White has all the pressure.
And Gukesh has a minute 20. I don't know how he's meeting bishop c3. Magnus holding that move in reserve. Instead, he's lifting the rook up to f4. And of course, if you have to play the move g6, and I think Gukesh will, that means you create this massive gash on the king side that White can occupy with his queen. But look at Magnus just goes for the e-file. Very positional approach here.
I love that. What a switch right there. It's the only open file on the board, which means whoever dominates it will get access to all the other things that matter. This is such an interesting switch from Magnus, giving up the pin, because rook e4 was also possible, and there was no rook e8 for Black. White could trade and win the knight. But I really like his awareness that the e-file is now the most important thing to control. And that's what Carlsen goes for.
And I would contemplate going back to g4 now that there's a massive outpost on e6 for the rook. So queen g4 and rook e6 looks really pretty. Gukesh, of course, wants king f7 and rook e8. And if you can get those 2 moves in, that's the danger of hanging your hat on an open file. If that file is taken away from you, your advantage kind of evaporates. And the bishop ain't too happy all of a sudden. It's kind of staring at a bunch of Black's pawns. So far, Gukesh defending pretty well. H3.
It's funny. I was going to ask whether G4 was possible there for Magnus, because the knight didn't have any other squares besides H6. You could trade, shake and bake, and mom helped with Queen E7, right? I mean, there was an idea there where, okay, he doesn't go for it, but whenever there's only one open file, I always told my students for years that open files are like commodities and that supply and demand are the principle that govern them. And so if there's only one, it's more valuable. So that E file that Magnus is controlling is going to be the way for him to either, and he goes G4. So I was, again, now there is Queen E7 at some point.
Yeah.
There's also Bishop H6.
So Rook E8 is kind of a semi-threat right now. It's not a real threat as long as the rook is protected by the bishop. Maybe Bishop C3 is a good compromise move. Magnus shifts his queen to D4. That's such a nasty move to face, Danny, because now you can't play Rook E8 because the pawn hangs. And you could play F5 here, but I would never open up the long diagonal for White's bishop. So Gukesh just kind of has to hang tight here and try to find the right opportunity to go Rook E8, which he's trying to do on the next move. maybe rook e3 and rook f3 to keep the rooks on the board is what the doctor ordered here for Magnus.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure he shouldn't have played queen e7. I mean, I'm not just doubling down on my commodities reference of supply and demand. I don't know that White's advantage is any bigger here than it was earlier, but still hard to see how that knight improves. And that pawn on g4, we always say a knight 3 squares away from a pawn is dominated. We, meaning Robert Hess, the royal we. So we see those pawns dominating that knight on g7 make it really hard for black.
I'm actually low-key surprised Magnus didn't try to keep the rooks on the board. Now, I think Gukesh, I mean, his position is still very nasty. Magnus still has long-term ideas on both sides, but at least black can play quickly. And black can rattle off a bunch of these moves, queen e7, king f7, and the margin of victory has narrowed considerably. I think Magnus's idea, Danny, is maybe to go c4 and b4 and a5, and ultimately to target the c7 pawn, actually. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree. Although I was just sitting here mentally thinking about the fact that I also agreed with you that Magnus trading rooks didn't really feel like a way to improve the advantage, and the open file is no longer a storyline in the position. Black's queen owns it. So I like Gukesh's chances. If we had to say this position versus what it was 10 moves ago, black has a much better chance to draw, I think, from here.
But I would still choose Magnus here. There's another idea, which is to play c3 and b4. Pretty common in these ideas. Posing an ultimatum. Either you trade and allow the outside passer, not an option. The knight is terrible at stopping corner pawns. Or you allow white to take on a5 and create a long-term weakness that's on a dark square. Gukesh defending very well, though. h5, trying to create weaknesses that he can attack on Magnus's king side to deflect his attention from the queen side.
I like it a lot, and Magnus has to be careful. If you misstep,
yeah,
you bring the king up, is black striking with things like f5, you create, and the knight starts to get into those squares. So white is still in the driver's seat, but if Gukesh opens up the king side, it would even be worth, let's say, an imaginary pawn, because if he can get a draw, get a perpetual check against the white king over there that doesn't have defense, this is what Gukesh needs, and the time pressure is starting to become real here.
Yeah, Magnus trying to be as flexible as possible. He brings the king up to defend g4. I'm just worried that Magnus is going to find some way to complicate the game, and Gukesh with 17 seconds for the rest of the game. Again, we've seen Magnus win so many of these games in so many different ways. I think f5 and queen e6 check in response to knight g7 is very strong.
He goes queen e1. That's interesting. He's flipping the script to the king side, threatens queen h4.
Oh, but that was such a beautiful tactic. I think you take it. I'm pretty sure you trade, and then you go g5 to restrict black's knight completely.
I think your move f5 was better than Magnus's queen e1. I agree. But if you take and play g5, I love where that bishop on c3 starts to flex on the knight. We always say bishops are better than knights when you have pawns on both sides of the board. We see the bishop dominant if you can open up that a1, h8 diagonal.
Okay, so Magnus keeps the queens on the board. But now he's got problems with his d5 pawn. And if you have to go king e4, Danny, what you mentioned earlier, f5 check, maybe. I mean, it opens up the bishop. No, now he gives up d5 with check.
Wait, now he's losing. What is going on here?
He just gave up the most important pawn with check.
He's running the king to the queen side.
Oh, and it's still not over. It's still a 3-result game.
Just don't take g5 because queen h8 is a mating problem.
Now he's pinned himself.
But here comes c5 and d4.
Yeah, but the bishop slips in through the cracks, and c7 is now a huge. Oh no, Magnus infiltrated. Gosh. I think Magnus is winning. The queen's
infiltrated. Here comes queen h7. No, he switched to the queen side instead.
Oh, don't get checkmated on g7.
Just shuffle your king. Don't mate yourself, Gukesh.
He goes for a queen trade, but he's going to lose a bunch of his pawns on the queen side. He's going to lose.
But king f5, and the bishop is blocked. The g-pawn's running. Who's faster?
But the a-pawn is so much faster.
The a-pawn is faster. The eval bar is evil.
That's it.
And says,
a6.
I'll answer your question, Danny. The a-pawn is faster, sir.
I wonder which pawn is faster here.
Oh my gosh. And with that, Magnus Carlsen, as the infamous meme and video reminds us, too weak, too slow is how most of his opponents have felt throughout his career. And in the time scramble, Carlsen gets it done. Not the prettiest win, but, just like the exchange sack the game before, Danya, we've seen a Magnus who's willing to take risks here just to put Gukesh under practical pressure.
And even after Magnus blundered, his most important pawn, he wasn't even thinking about trying to bail out, clam up, and make a draw. He was still playing for a win that entire time. And
Yeah.
just the pressure that he puts in time scrambles is unbelievable. What did Gukesh in ultimately? Danny, of course, 5+1 action. And then there will be an hour of 3+1, followed by 30 minutes of 1+1. All right. And here we see Magnus Carlsen. He's put his hoodie on. Danny resolving a couple of audio issues here. I think I can hear you now, Danny. Perfect. I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly, Danny.
I can hear you guys.
Awesome. And we are ready for the
Hey,
games to begin. Danny?
I'm here. I can't
Perfect.
see anything.
Oh, I think the game hasn't started just yet.
Okay.
We're waiting on Magnus there. He's put his hood on. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Um, I think we're back to muting Danny. No, but he's smiling. Wait, Danny, you can hear me, right? All right. Still waiting on Magnus here. His arms are crossed. All right, I think you can hear me now, Danny. Awesome. The world is right indeed. I missed you dearly, Danny. I don't know how I survived these last 2 minutes. Honestly, it was a heart-rending moment, heart-wrenching moment. You got what I did there, right? Spell with an SCH, just like this guy I know. No comment. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Oh, Tool. Oh. How
What
could I have? I'm slipping.
you are slipping, but it's okay. I'll take it. All right, we've got a Caro Con, an advanced Caro with the bishop outside the structure. For those looking for the defining factor here, Black's bishop is not back there on c8 where it's blocked by the closed center. So these positions, Black has solved that huge problem, but White has some chances, a little bit extra time, and sometimes that bishop can even be a target, which is why Black plays h6 to be able to bring it back to h7.
Yeah, and Gukesh's setup is called the short variation. This is probably not even arguably. This is the topical way to meet the bishop f5 Caro in the last couple of years, and it's a very positional line. So the battle is going to revolve around both sides of the board. Black will often play c5 French style, Danny, and then the knight from e7 moves into c6. It's like a French with the bishop outside the pawn chain. I don't know why anybody would ever play the move 1 e6 again after seeing this position.
Can we just turn this into an infomercial for why you never play the French? Look how happy that bishop is on f5. highlight it for me, Danya. Make it
So
green.
happy.
Make it green, baby, because it's
Green.
happy. Green is for good. That bishop is happy. It's got a diagonal. It's got a safe square on h7.
Nice
I
little
mean,
tuck away spot. Yeah.
who plays the French? Am I right?
You're preaching to the choir here.
All right.
It's totally beyond me.
Well, all right. Jokes aside, we have a position that Black is striving for c5, as Danya highlighted. You see the queen on b6, the knight on d7. The pieces will coordinate to try to get that play. But White is a teeny bit better, despite Black solving the bishop problems. That's usually because the computer's kind of like the space that White has, and the pawn on e5 giving White a little more lift. But what's the plan here if you're the first player, if you're Gukesh?
I just want to, maybe not exactly answering the question. I think a lot of people are wondering why not c5? What's the hesitation? So if we bring up an analysis board really quickly, and this is part of Gukesh's plan, is to play against c5. what often happens if you play c5 prematurely is that there's a big trade on c5. White can stick a bishop on this really nice outpost
Yeah.
and then follow up with knight d4, and then the bishop slides into e3 and the queen gets in trouble. So with the king side still undeveloped, playing c5 often contains a lot more risk than benefit. And that's why we see Magnus taking a fundamentally different approach. He moves his knight away to g6, and that clears the space for the bishop to come out to e7. But Gukesh shoving his h-pawn right down the board and knocking the knight back to f8 or maybe to h4.
He likes that h-pawn push. We saw him do it,
doesn't he?
in the other game that he had as white in that Rossalimo. So liking that little H, Harry, you're a wizard there, that h-pawn. Knight h4 though by Magnus, which is a good lesson. I think that when you have less space, if there's a safe way to trade minor pieces, as long as it tactically works, this is usually the preferred approach. And that's a good lesson for any viewers out there looking to learn from Magnus. Putting a knight on f8, not what you want here. You want to get some pieces traded to give you some more squares, and your pieces aren't wrestling each other anymore.
And I always struggle in these positions with white because the eval bar always gives, something between 0.5 and 1.3. Here it's giving an entire point, which is supposedly a big advantage. But how do you follow up? Space advantages don't win games. You actually have to convert it into something tangible. And often that something, Danny, is f4, g4, and f5. But I would be very nervous pushing those kingside pawns against the world champion.
Yeah, especially because once you push them, they can't go back, right? Thanks, Captain Obvious. But pawns don't move backwards, and opening your king will often come back to bite you, especially in fast time controls, right? Even if it's something you would do, Danya, in classical chess, blitz is just a different animal where you know that inevitably, okay, knight d3 is going to allow bishop e4, and g2 is a problem.
And if f3, then bishop takes d3 and knight takes e5 is so easy to miss.
It's a tactic. It's on the board. Will Magnus see it? Bishop
e4, nasty little move.
White can play g3 there, but there would still have been knight f3, bishop d3. Okay, so Magnus instead goes c5, wants to start opening up lines.
Pretty surprised, actually, that Magnus didn't go bishop e4.
Yeah, he maybe didn't see the tactic. It's possible.
He goes instead for the mass trade on c5, and now that he's castled kingside, you don't have to worry about bishop b5 or bishop e3. All of those moves are totally innocuous. So I still think Black has solved all of his opening problems here.
Yeah, agreed. And the issue is, as these pieces are traded, I'm feeling more and more like White didn't get enough out of the first stage because the e-pawn is a little weak. I guess you can play bishop e3, bishop d4, right? If you can anchor in a bishop, you're not stressed about it. Maybe you do have f4 and g4 still on the agenda. Okay, wow, bishop f4.
And another reason the Caro is such a good opening for blitz is that you often have all of Black's pieces on perfect squares. And you have that here. The bishop is so nice on h7. It's just slicing through the entire board, kind of ruining the coordination between White's pieces. The rooks can come to d8 and c8, and the knight can always swing back to f5 to prepare the d4 pawn break, by the way. Very unpleasant idea. Or it can exert more pressure on g2 with that aforementioned bishop e4 move, which hasn't gone anywhere and is still very much possible.
I was going to say, that's still possible, although g3 now a little more interesting than before, because if bishop e4, g3, that knight might have to go to f5, and is your bishop getting in trouble on e4? So I really like the instructive point you had about Black pushing d4, because I think that's a thematic one for people to understand about the structure, because you don't really want White putting a piece on d4, and that's called a wedge in a structure where you replace the middle pawn with a piece. If Black can get a rook on d8 and play d4, usually the tactics and the space that is opening up there will be preferred by Black.
Yeah, and as one Robert Hess would point out, as bishop e4 is in fact on the board, Black holds the main pawn break, and Black has a second pawn break in f7, f6, which you do see in the French often.
Yeah.
And it can also get very unpleasant. Look at White's kingside pawns. They're both weak. And again, it's the Magnus effect. You just don't want to play a move like g3 against Carlsen. So that's going to be additional time. Gukesh goes g4.
G4?
He laughs in my face. He says, hey, I don't want to play g3. I want to push it one square further.
G4, here we go.
Damn,
this
girl.
Is, not quite G5 and we live. Not quite G5 and we live for Canty, but damn girl, G4. By the way, I know the eval bar said, yeah, that's okay for Black, but I kind of like the spirit. I like king h2 coming next to unpin the f-pawn. Maybe I can play bishop e3 and f4. Go back to the idea you said. There's also bishop g3 as a threat in this exact position. Where's that knight going, Danya?
Yeah, that's the twist. We thought the bishop was going to get in trouble. Now the knight's in some trouble, but f5 by Magnus, he just says, hey, I'm meeting you at the top. And very important, bishop g3 here, the queen can drop back to e7, defending the knight. And it can also adopt an attacking posture later from g5. I don't like the direction. That I admire Gukesh's bravery to play g4, but I feel like in the context of a blitz game, Danny, he's got way too many weaknesses on the king side.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And again, it is a little bit of the Magnus biased itis, right? He's playing the world champ and we know what he does. The position is very tactical and unclear in some ways, but every second that ticks off the clock, the harder it becomes to play positions where your king is open. You are more likely to blunder. This is a fact. And so it's why we were nervous about these ideas, despite the initial applause to G4 and let's go. We saw Anita in chat, but I'm very nervous about White's position.
Yeah, me too. Bishop to e3. So Gukesh knocks the queen out of c5 and paves the way for either f3 or f4, depending on where Magnus puts his queen. f3 does technically trap the bishop, by the way. So,
but there's going to be
d4.
What is going? And by the way, the computer loved it. He goes full Braunstein, baby. It's a clearance sacrifice.
At these pieces, and bishop h1 is an idea that light squares are just massive holes. And if f3 here, then Magnus will play f takes g4, using the knight and the queen to generate an unstoppable mate threat on g2. This is amazing.
Dude, d4. Can we bring up the analysis board to provide a little bit of instruction on that move d4? Because I'm also wondering whether Gukesh should have bailed and taken with the queen, Danya. Could he get into the endgame? He should have, right? Because you're going to get mated otherwise.
But the thing is, here Magnus could have dropped his queen back to c6 with the same types of threats. So apparently the move was bishop takes d4, queen c6, and now f4 with the idea of meeting bishop h1 with rook f2. How do you miss that with 30 seconds? Such an easy idea. Very natural recapturous. But okay, there's moves happening. Gukesh played rook c1. No, but this is total. I mean, look at the light squares on the king side. Ugh.
Oh my gosh, this is
g2 and queen f3 is coming.
Opposite colored bishops are invading, a lot like your in-laws over the holiday season. You didn't invite them. They show up. They're dominating the holiday season. You're like, how'd you get here? I'm sorry, in-law reference. I blacked out a little bit.
Danny,
look at this.
Queen d8.
Queen is coming to h4. It's over.
Look at that maneuver. Oh, he missed it. It was mate.
It was mate. Black. This shows you how dominant the obscure bishops are. But Magnus has now missed forced mate in a couple games. So despite him leading the match.
Crazy. Queen d8 is just basic Betty right there. But
look at this.
Winning.
Look at this.
Still winning.
The light square problems remain. Your in-laws haven't left yet. This is the problem when you have an attack to defend on one color square and your dark square bishop is like a big pawn there on e3. Let's highlight it in red. Look at that big pawn on e3 doing nothing.
Man.
Here comes Magnus.
On e3, and you won't have any more pawns left after Magnus finishes taking all of them. Gukesh is going to flag on top of everything else. 1 second, and Magnus is going to promote his pawn. H3.
H-pawn. H-pawn.
H2.
Yo, wizard, Harry. Yo, wizard.
Danny, why can't I do that? I'm missing mate in like 3 and still winning in like 3 moves like that. That's the margin of victory that Magnus Carlsen has. And that's because he dominates all of the squares positionally. Total positional domination leads to scenarios where you can miss mate and still be completely winning.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, Magnus missed a forced mate in a previous game. Again, also still won. And here, he misses queen d8, queen h4, but also still wins, right? But it is an instructive lesson of obscure bishops and the problems therein. Your bishop was basically a bystander on the dark squares if you're Gukesh. Magnus shows how to convert those things, and he's got a 4-game lead to go with it.
Man, and it's weird because the games are pretty close. The middle games are complicated. I wouldn't say that he's blowing Gukesh out of the water in any of these games. He's just getting the upper hand in critical moments. I mean, he's just outplaying him from dynamically balanced middle games. And that's maybe even more impressive.
No, and we both said the same thing, and it's not to necessarily disparage Magnus, but he hasn't been that impressive today, honestly. But I think in the time scrambles, he's just been that much sharper, has a little more experience, I think, than Gukesh does, and it kind of sucks to say that if you're Gukesh, because Magnus maybe hasn't even found his form yet. Stella hasn't even gotten her groove back yet, and she's up 4 games.
But that's what makes athletes like Magnus so impressive. When somebody at that level has an all-star performance, anybody can come up with a dominant victory. The real question is, how do you play when you're in mediocre form? Can you still dominate even when you're missing a lot of stuff you normally would see?
Yep.
And the answer thus far has been a resounding yes, but the match is very far from over. We still have 2 more segments and
Yep.
a 4-point lead. It's not a 10-point lead. Gukesh can still, one victory, and we're singing a different tune.
Yep. You've got to start somewhere. What do they say? One game at a time. Focus on what you can control. How many sports cliches can we fit in? It is what it is.
Right, exactly.
It is what it is. Do what you can here. This is
Just bring
this
your
is
A game just
you
down the
know
stretch.
all the things. Right. Last game of the year, Dan can't hold anything back now. Anyway, this
Team
is
effort.
but okay, we're gonna keep. But all right, you get it. The point is, Gukesh, he does have a pretty decent position here as black. I mean, I know the eval bar favors white a little bit, but this is a certainly a playable one. The problem is we called for it a couple games ago, and I'm gonna call for it again. He needs to stop the bleeding. He needs to get another point on the board. If you're just tuning in, first of all, where have you been? Gukesh won the second game in fine fashion, by the way. It was an awesome game, and the score was tied 1-1, but Magnus has been on a tear ever since. And I think if you're Gukesh, forget about the score, hold, play a great game, get a draw against the champ, and then you can build on that.
Yeah, you just need to not lose. And once again, I'm worried, just given Magnus's body language as he kind of sits back, his hoodie is on. He's in sinister Magnus mode right now.
Yep.
And that bishop on d5 is such a monster. And it's going to be replaced by a monster even if you capture it, which I hate about pieces like that. You take it, Magnus might even take with the e-pawn, Danny, and organize some serious pressure on this e5 pawn. So Magnus preparing a4, a5 on the queen side.
Yep. Protected pass pawns are a problem, and we see it now. The pawn on c4 protects the d5 pawn. For those who don't speak chess terminology yet, that's called a protected
Ugh.
passer. Here comes a5, prying open another file for the rook on b1. This is a position that Magnus has, he's massaged a few of these before toward a victory, and this is a tough one for black.
Gukesh has to create counterplay on the king side, and he's got to do it in short order because Magnus is already, the enemies are at the gate on the queen side. So
Yep.
maybe a move like queen f6 to prepare f4 and simultaneously protect b6. Now, white could be the one to play f4 there. So, let's not forget that the e5 pawn is also a weakness.
Yep.
Oh, and look at the clock. Magnus playing with so much confidence this game.
I was going to say, I mean, I want to play like h5 if I'm black and sacrifice the b pawn to get h4. You have to do things that are more practical in nature, I think, if you're going to mix it up while you're getting ground down. But he goes e4, and I think Magnus is just going to win the b pawn. I think he's going to.
Magnus is totally not buying this.
Yeah, he's going to take on b6 twice, and he'll take back on d3 after the rooks are exchanged and the protected pass d pawn. Daryl's going to run up the board, touchdown on d8.
And Gukesh is trying to, stir things up on the king side. The issue is that he's basically out of pieces. I think Magnus could even just play d takes e4. Oh, I guess the idea for Gukesh is after a takes b6,
E3?
maybe at some point there's like queen c7 forking the two pawns. Or
I
E3,
thought it was maybe
yeah,
e3.
sure.
I think
Which
E3
is why
might
I would take on
spice it up.
e4.
Okay. Yeah,
would
if
just
E3
play
happens,
DE.
you're at least you're giving yourself a chance, right? You're saying there's a chance.
No, there definitely is a chance if black plays e3. Maybe even g takes f4 is a move here. Because, your king on g1 is perfectly safe. Black, again, is out of pieces to attack with. Magnus is spoiled for choice here. He plays rook takes e4, also possible.
Yeah, getting pieces off the board makes sense when your king is about to be opened up. Makes you feel a little more safe. Magnus now has two pass pawns in the center, the E and D pawns for good measure. Oh,
now
man.
AB.
What?
But now AB.
Queen C7, not right away, right? Pawn takes, obviously.
Yeah, first you take.
First you take. If rook b6, queen c7. That's a fork.
Oh, there's queen b3 there.
Mm.
So rook b6, maybe there's queen c3. One of those types of moves could be really nasty for white.
Yeah.
Magnus, that F file is open, but he's so good at squeezing wins out of these types of positions.
I don't know that Magnus will do this because he squeezes these positions well. Not quite engine-like, but as close as any human probably is. But
Hmm.
let's not underestimate that this is a blunderable position for Magnus. That's the point. Is that open king, the open F file. This is a position where that eval bar could swing on a single move if Magnus isn't careful.
No question about it, which is why he puts his queen on the most solid square on the board, where it simultaneously protects c4, protects this important f3 square, the f2 square, and to add insult to injury for Gukesh, e5 is now a massive threat, which might necessitate a passive move like rook e8.
Yeah. Well, then
I
White
don't
might
see a
grab the F
defense.
file, right? We talk about open file commodities, supply and demand. You give up the F
Yeah,
file, is White just going to switch Rook F1,
or the
Queen,
b pawn.
yeah, or the B pawn.
Ugh, I don't see it here for Gukesh. I don't see it. Maybe rook f3. I don't know. Yeah, actually, rook f3 doesn't look too bad. He just
Oh
resigns.
wow,
Oh,
wow, just resigns to start to strike back. I mean, on the one hand, I respect the match awareness. One of the things that we often see preventing people from making comebacks in the Speed Chess Championship, everyone, is playing lost positions probably longer than you should because you're also competing
hmm,
against that enemy above our heads there in the sidebar, which is that counting down clock. And if you're going to mount a comeback, you have to do it within the time frame, right? It's a shot clock, if you will. And so, I mean, Don, again, he's playing Magnus. I don't think that this is the beginning of a comeback for Gukesh. I'm just pointing out that there is some practical awareness of the fact that, like, look,
yeah.
I could lose this game now, or I could lose this game in literally 4 minutes from now, right? If I continue to defend this horrible position. So let's go for it. And I respect that.
Yeah, it's just that you don't quite feel as dejected against anybody when you've got a bad position. Against Magnus, when you start losing a lot of games consecutively, like the moment you're slightly worse, you already feel like there's literally no hope. You feel like you're playing an engine. And I personally don't get this feeling really against anybody but Magnus. It's just a unique sensation of
Yep.
utter hopelessness. And in the blink of an eye, he's up by 5 points. Smarter Chess is sipping some Dom Perignon somewhere in some dark corner somewhere.
Whatever, Smarter
Yeah,
Chess. No one even likes you anymore. Just kidding.
exactly.
Shout out to Smarter Chess. Shout out to the whole crew bringing you the SCC. Shout out to the Fair Play team. Say hi to Magnus's little chair there. You see that little phone on the chair? That's the Fair Play
Yep.
camera observing his field of vision. Of course, there are a lot of other things going into that. But just hi Fair Play team. Hi, love you, miss you. Bye. Um, they like
Crazy.
our NBA references, Danya.
I see. Yeah, chat really taking kindly to American sports references. Oh
That was my
man. And yeah, Gukesh kind of mixing things up here, 1d4. And Magnus at this point just kind of playing chill mode, Bogo Indian, just getting close positions and squeezing them out into victories.
Yep, this interesting structure. You have a Maroxy bind style structure for white with e4 and c4 cramping down on d5 and b5. Uh, Black actually has a Boleslavsky hole position, which is not a traditional Maroxy bind like you would see in a Sicilian, with the e pawn being traded. You see this position from Bogo
Whoa.
Indians and Kings Indians.
Did I just hear a Boleslavsky reference by
You did,
Danny Range? I'm
you
impressed.
did. Hey, Pawn Structures 101, baby. You ever seen that video series on chess.com, Pawn Structure 101?
I wake up, it's my alarm clock, actually.
It might have helped you before you wrote your positional chess books.
if if only I'd known what to watch. It just feels like Magnus is already better here. It's so weird.
Yeah,
Like from a conceptual standpoint, anytime there's a Marazzi bind, White's supposed to have an objective edge. But the way Magnus has positioned his pieces, his rook's coming to e8, the knight's dropping into c5. There's a hole on b3. Magnus could secure it with a4. It's the Magnus effect. Again, you always just give him the benefit of the doubt. These complicated middle games. It's
yep,
crazy.
yep, yep. And despite the space disadvantage for Black's pieces have squares, and that's usually kind of a key indicator. You can have lack of space and your pieces are wrestling, or you can have a position like this. You've got the Black Knight maybe has c5. The dark square bishop on f6 is comfortable. You can even play g6 if you want to keep it on that diagonal to back that thing up. The rook on e8 hits the e4 pawn. So
Mm-hmm.
Black's position is just fine.
Gukesh going aggressive with f2, f4. The drawback is that now you've got the long-term weakness of the e4 pawn. But the plus side is that in some positions, e5 can be a tactical idea, opening up the light squared bishop. So Magnus can't fully fall asleep on that idea.
Yeah.
Black could trade everything on d4 and go queen f6. I feel like that's the kind of idea which is up Magnus's alley.
Yeah. Simplify. Remember, the thing that happens to space as the pieces can no longer use it, if you don't use it, you lose it literally with space, which is that the squares become weaknesses and they become holes and they become targets. And so if you play imaginary chess and just do what Don you just did there, take all the pieces off of d4, queens come to f6 and they're traded, those dark squares on d4 and even e3 are weak. The f4 pawn, it starts to look more overextended rather than strong. And this is an important kind of instructive measure a lot of people can take in their games. If you're worse and you have less space, trading can kind of turn that space your opponent has into some open air for you to attack.
Yeah, that's a great point. And of course, it takes the sting out of these tactical ideas like e5.
Yeah.
And Magnus taking a pretty deep think, and there goes,
goes
the trade and queen f6.
Takes the sting out of the position, just as you said. Takes the sting out of e5, takes the sting out of white's space.
Now, if I'm Gukesh, I would actually go for the trade and then go knight e3 and try to stick the knight on d5 ASAP. Before Black has completed his development, using the fact that e4 is untouchable. We can bring up internet. Well, okay, actually not, because he's going for it.
He's going for it.
I think he's going to go.
I like it a lot. And by the way, let's bring up the analysis board anyway, though, because after knight e3, let's show why knight takes e4 doesn't work. Knight to d5, and Bob's your uncle with a double attack on c7 and the knight on e4. There you go. Look at that. You were moving the pieces right as I was saying it. I feel so at home with you. I feel so at home with you. I feel so safe. It's hard for me to not be in control of the mouse. It's been my whole life, but I feel safe with you, Danya.
Well, I have big shoes to fill in regard. My arrow drawing is a lot less accurate than yours. I will give you that. But I really dislike Gukesh's move a4. I don't get that at all. Because, the medicine is worse than the disease here. You're curing the problem of Black going a4, but you're creating just massive weaknesses on c5 and b4, more dark squares. You can't afford that.
Agreed.
And now you can't, you can still go knight e3 maybe. But at that point, already knight takes e4 is on the table. He goes rook e3.
Yeah, and the eval bar also agreed. I think you were right. You were right on the money that knight e3 was needed and timely. Now you're defending the e-pawn, if anything. But this is a bit of a Magnus effect, right? It's hard. You miss opportunities because you're not looking for them. You maybe play, as you said, the cure is worse than the disease. You play a little more defensive than you should. And Black has solved all of his problems here.
Yeah, and you just slip into defensive mode automatically, even if you're slightly better. You just assume you're slightly worse because you're playing Magnus. And Gukesh with g4, so he's still trying to build up some activity on the king side.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the queens off the board is a paper tiger, and one typical idea is for Black to later play g5 and carve out this massive outpost on e5 for one of his pieces. So you might see Magnus going h6. He goes g6 though to stop knight f5.
Yeah, I really liked your g5 idea. Of course, it didn't work there because white would have played knight f5, but it is a good one. But here you see, again, it's less space for Black, but show me a bad piece for Black. The bishop and knight are doing what they're supposed to do. The rooks are doing what they're supposed to do. This is how you maneuver and play positions with less space. And like you said, white's, what is that phrase used? Paper tiger on the king side, the big pawn space? Tiger.
Yep. Paper tiger indeed. And Magnus, you just know he's going to savor every moment of this endgame. He just, this is his jam right here. And his jelly.
Jam and his jelly.
I'm pretty jelly of his endgame technique. I'm just going to ignore that.
I could take this so many different directions here. But all right, h4 is played. It is a crouching tiger, even if it is a paper one. Right? He's trying to pounce. Create some kind of play.
G7.
That's an interesting move. He's kind of inducing f5, and then he'll probably just go right back to trying to use the e5 square if white plays f5. Yeah, you highlighted it. And
if g5, he can go knight back to e6 at some point. Again, trying to. Well, okay, you can see him chipping away. And knight e6 is going to be unpleasant later. Because if there's a trade on g5, Danny, then the move f5 permanently weakens the g-pawn.
I guess if you're Gukesh, though, we keep talking about stopping the bleeding. Maybe the practical. I was just going to say the practical thing to do is just king f2, and do I just like sit and say, all right, I'm just taking a draw. Like I'm just going to play king f2, king f3, and what do you got here? Rook e2, rook e3. maybe that's the prudent thing to do.
It is, and you've got to do it fast. He's taking 15 seconds per move. You cannot afford to drop to 20 seconds here and defend this for another 70 moves. So
Yeah.
I'm very pessimistic about Gukesh's chances. Maybe try to trade everything with F5 or maybe even H5, but that requires calculation. And boom, he's down to 30 seconds already.
This is why they play the game.
Move.
Time is part of it. And
he's taking another 15 seconds on this move. And counting.
When it goes red, when the clock goes red, you got to hurry up.
And you just know Magnus is going to find some way to mix things up here. You don't see it right now. Everything seems to be protected for White. Magnus is going to find the right time to go knight e6 and knight d4, and he's going to jump around, and he's going to win one of White's pawns.
And he's doing it, inducing these pawns forward, saying, come and get me, big fella. Every pawn you push can't go back. Becomes a weakness.
There's the blunder. Knight d3. He blundered knight d3.
Winning the exchange.
Don't tell me Magnus is going to miss it.
Oh, he did! Forktown! He misses it. Magnus is missing tactics today.
It's crazy. But he's still winning. It's like the same narrative repeating itself over and over again. He's so positionally dominant, Danny, that he can afford to miss this stuff and still win.
It's good to be king. Bishop E8.
I can't believe he missed knight d3. That was like...
What's funny is bishop f7 is almost zugzwang. Down. Let's highlight the bishop on d1 has to guard both b3 and h5.
Yep.
He's stuck.
Yeah, but the good thing for White, this is what's saving Gukesh. King h4, there's h6 and the pawn slips in.
Aha! Taste the soup. Where's the spoon?
But there's goodbye, b3 pawn.
B3. B3.
Goodbye. No, everything's collapsing here.
Yeah. A4 falls, F5 will fall next, and we will likely get one more game in the 5-minute portion here. If you're just tuning in, maybe watching the SCC for the first time, it's 90 minutes of action of 5-minute blitz before we move into the faster time controls that follow, 3-minute and eventually bullet. We will get one more 5-minute game, I'm sure, after this. I don't think this is going to take another 3 minutes for Magnus to convert.
It's going to take another 10 seconds. The bishop can come back to g8 anytime h6 happens. I would just push a4. I think Magnus might be trying to bleed the match clock, but I don't think so.
It's interesting. Okay. Magnus also very aware of the meta strategy that is that ticking clock you see above Magnus's camera. 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Mm-hmm. There's no way he prolongs this game that long, though.
You can take g4 and then take h6? Okay, no, he doesn't.
Gukesh is going to flag.
Yeah.
Oh, just another clinical Magnus display right there. Just vintage Magnus game.
Yep. Vintage Magnus game. Vintage Magnus hoodie. He likes to be all snuggled up when he's winning himself some chess games. You know, get him his blankie. He already took a bite of his banana. We're back to that Nimzo. By the way, proving a4 was a mouse slip. We see a3. If you're just tuning in, Magnus played a4 in that position in game 1, which we speculated was a mouse slip, of course.
Yeah, and we're going to have to confirm it with him in the interview, of course, assuming that we interview him. Can't make any assumptions. It's still plenty of chess left to be played. But he has gone full circle here in the final game of the 5-minute portion.
Full circle back to 1d4, which is what he played in game 1. The scoreboard slightly more dominant than it was in game 1. A 6-game lead for the world champion.
And a 6-game winning streak.
6-game winning streak. It was tied 1-1. It was tied 1-1.
It's crazy how this is all unfolded. And adoption is on the table if Magnus can win this one.
We don't like to use that word around here. As a guy who's been adopted more times than he'd like to admit.
Hey, I've been adopted, so more times than I'd like to.
I was talking about real life, but that's why I'm in therapy. You know, lots of bouncing around for this guy. Different discussion. But okay, also on the chessboard.
Making me all emotional.
All right.
I could give you a hug.
It's okay. Later. We'll virtual hug it out. A Nimzo here for black. I like Gukesh's position. I know that the edge for white is there on the eval bar, but these positions are playable for black. You got to get bishop b7 in before white starts pushing e4. Oh, wait, it's white to move here. Wait.
It is white to move, and e4 is a possibility.
E4 is a possibility.
But okay, bishop b7 in the attack center.
Okay.
No, white is better here. White is clearly better.
I was looking at the position thinking black plays bishop b7, and it's all good. I play these Nimzo positions, but But no, it was white to move.
I don't get why white has gotten this move in. I actually think queen c7 is a very serious mistake by Gukesh. You have to go bishop b7 here
Yeah,
and at least make it hard for white to go e4. And I wouldn't say that this is tilt, but I just feel like Gukesh, he's dejected and he's giving Magnus everything he wants out of the opening in every game.
I agree, and it's funny. Everyone can see that, like, the way that whole thing went down in real time was like very revealing of
Yeah.
what's happened. Like, I was just assuming, because you have to get bishop b7 in those positions, you have to stop e4. Queen c7 was a mistake. Tilt is the strong word to use, but it's probably a very real thing here. And this is a great position for white. This is what you don't want as a Nimzo, which is the position starts to open up. What are you giving up in the Nimzo, everyone? The bishop pair, meaning that dark square bishop is literally, this is not a paper tiger. This is a crouching tiger, hidden dragon. It's coming to g5, and the attack will be on. Black has to get queenside pressure before white starts expanding the space and using the bishop pair, but that's not the case in this game.
I was thinking about a wild idea. If we could bring up the analysis board as Gukesh contemplates, yet another challenging position.
Yep.
CD, knight takes e4 is a worthy attempt. And I do see that after queen e4, queen c4, queen a8,
Bishop
white
a6.
wins bishop a6. There's also this move knight c6 here, which is actually really tricky. And if white plays a random move, queen takes f1 and bishop a6 wins the queen back with interest. So
Yeah, it's check on the king, and the black rook takes the queen next. There is also bishop
exactly.
a6 instead, and then knight c.
Yeah.
No, okay. Yeah, it's bishop a6,
Yes,
rook moves, and then there's knight d2, tempo and defense.
But then you take, and then both rooks are hanging. So you can see the eval bar is not giving as overwhelming of an assessment as you would expect, being down a rook. Maybe queen c3 also to keep knight c6 alive. But anyways, Gukesh, he probably explored that angle. He decided against it, and he's gone for the more sort of pedestrian knight bd7.
Yeah. Well,
Unpleasant.
I think Magnus will play bishop g5 as discussed. And what happens in these structures, Danya, if we can highlight, the bishop will come to g5. And if white gets his way, you'll play e5 at some point, and that bishop on c4 can even slide back to d3. And the structure has now changed where white is opening up space toward the king side. And so he plays e5 right away. Very similar,
You
right?
called it.
He's all in. Knight g5. Here we go. This is going to be an attack.
He just says, I'm going to checkmate you because you don't have a dark squared bishop. And after h6, the knight's going to swing back to e4. You see that so often in these positions. Are you going to d6? Not necessarily. You're actually just normally going queen h5 and then sack on h6, Danny. And Gukesh is just so passive here.
Yeah, he doesn't even want the bishop to develop there. He's like, knight g5 first, MBD, which is obviously South African for I'm going to checkmate you. NBD, here we go. And knight g5, queen h5 is coming. Don't even care about the c3 pawn. By the way, the clock has reached 0, which means this is officially the last game we will see in the 5-minute portion. After our quick break, of course, we will have 3-minute blitz. And will we see adoption? Will we see an epic comeback? Will we see Danya slip in more awkward puns than makes any of us comfortable? You got to watch and find out. You're going to have to stick around and see.
Always yes.
Yep,
always yes. I should point out, by the way, knight takes c3. There was queen to d3, forking mate threat, and the knight on c3. There's that knight going back to e4. Magnus is 3278. That is quite the blitz rating.
3278.
I'm just foaming at the mouth looking at that number. I mean,
Danya looking to go on a bender and grab that leaderboard.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm about 160 points away at the moment.
It is true. A good comment from Beijing Chess King. The point is, we're going to see a lot of instructive stuff, regardless of whether this is as close a match as a Roni and Andraken, let's say, that went literally the distance. We're probably not going to see that. Let's be honest. But we will see a lot of instructive chess, and this recoordination of white's pieces and white's forces with tempi, e5, knight g5, knight e4. It's super instructive stuff.
Sorry, that
do you want to say words, or you just want to make noises?
I kind of just want to make noises because the words have been spoken by the move f6. I like that move by Gukesh. I think that's what you have to do if you're black here, because otherwise queen h5 and bishop h6 was basically over Red Rover, as one commentator likes to say.
Mufasa. Say it again. Mufasa. Magnus. Ooh, makes me shiver.
This is flying over my head.
You've never seen Lion King?
I I've never seen the movie in its entirety. I know who Mufasa is, and I know Simba. I know the storyline. I've never seen the entire movie. I'm not a big like Disney guy, you know. Mulan is the only movie I've seen like multiple times. The only Disney movie.
God, what a random movie to have seen multiple times.
I
Not even a,
loved Mulan.
it's good, but it's not top five. All right, we're back. Bishop
And I
h6 is
love
on
you,
the board.
Danny.
Bishop h6, Mufasa, Magnus. Here he comes. What is going on?
Queen g4.
Queen
He
g4,
just gives up the bishop and he says, I'm picking up this juicy little morsel on e6.
and then d5 is hanging after that. The knight's under attack. If the knight moves, f6 is hanging. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Sitting
that's
in the
the thing
dark over here.
when you're up by so much, and you know, Magnus doesn't take these kinds of risks normally, but he knows he's got nothing to lose. He loses a game by accident like this. Big deal. You know, my lead is still 5. And that's the terrifying thing about facing someone like Magnus in this situation. Queen g6, by the way, is a totally viable alternative here to queen takes e6.
No, I went with queen e6 because you pointed it out, but originally I was thinking queen g6 was the move, I promise. And now what do you do? I mean, queen takes h6 is coming next. In some positions, I can even just trade on d5 if removing that knight allows f6 to fall with tempi, depending on the spot. This is no fun. By the way, rook g8. Let's show rook g8 on the board. We don't even need analysis, but just show rook g8. Oop, eval bar. That's checkmate. Boop, boop, bah.
Let's get down to business.
Wah, wah.
To defeat the Huns. And Gukesh down to 10 seconds. This one's over.
This one's over.
Knight b8. Knight b8 might be the only way to connect the queen on the king side, but that drops f6. Oh, God. I would take, or take, go back, and maybe go f4, rook f3, which I think you pointed out. Yeah, Magnus pre-moving it all.
He's not going to f4. The rook lift shallst commence. Put the rook on the elevator, slide it up, right bulbs your uncle over there in the H file. Get it done there. All right, here we go. I mean, it's happening. It's happening.
I think hip to hop uses the best word in such a situation. Relentless. That's totally what Magnus is. He is relentless, and he just keeps pummeling you. And he does not let up. It's human nature to let up in these situations, but if anything, Magnus just plays with more confidence.
Can we actually give a shout out that if Magnus wins this game, Smarter Chess was wrong. Smarter Chess predicted 7.5, 1.5. Take that, and doing what he can to keep pace.
Let's see what he comes up with here in the first couple of games of the 3-minute portion. It's 3+1 is just a completely different game from 5+1, but Magnus has been playing with such speed and confidence, especially in the last couple of games, that I'm still pretty worried about Gukesh here. And we have a kind of a weird King's Indian attack with a pawn situated on b5.
Yeah, it's the b5 extension that when it first started getting played, they said, was it a mouse slip? And then they're like, wait, it's over the board. You can't slip with a mouse. So you meant to do that.
It's like those videos where Hikaru grabs, you know, the imaginary mouse on the left side of the board.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing there.
Just, you know, we've come so far that these days more online chess happens than over the board chess. Yeah, the B pawn extending to actually talk about why you do it if you're black. Gaining that space makes a lot of sense. And you see A5 advanced after the B pawn. And when you put your pieces behind pawns, particularly the knights, often they can do more damage. You see white doing the same thing on the king's side with the G pawn, followed by knight to G3 for Gukesh. But Magnus just, he's acting like he's been here before, giving his shoulder a scratch. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
That was an old pawn push injury coming back to haunt Magnus. Oh, I pushed that pawn too hard over there. Let me massage that one out.
Stretched a muscle. Yeah. Well, he's going to stretch some of White's muscles on the queen side here. If you can slip in A3 and force B3, then the entire complex of dark squares is massively weakened. You often see the knight dropping into D4, and Black's attack just kind of plays itself on the queen side.
Yeah. Okay, I do like queen D2. I like bishop h6 coming. I know I'm not going to checkmate you, Ganya, but you know, a boy can dream.
Hey, you've checkmated me before. You can do it again.
Oh, you're so kind.
Although it took you until the end game, but you did it eventually.
That's right. Although, have you told everybody that I own our Over the Board Plus record?
Well, that's what I was heavily implying.
Oh,
But,
okay.
I was being tasteful about it. With a
I,
whopping score of
when have I
1-0.
ever been tasteful? I've never been accused of being tasteful. Okay, and no, I'm kidding.
Well, and you made me cry after the game,
No,
so
I didn't. Come
that's a
on.
double whammy. I was definitely tearing up a little bit.
Yeah, but you cried after every loss at that point in your career.
That's true.
You were,
That's totally
you know,
true.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I beat you when you were like, 6 or something like that. Not quite. You were a master level player, but it was you were still little enough that you had to sit on a phone book, I think.
Yeah, there was sort of a gradual process of the object becoming smaller. At first, it was a booster seat.
Yeah.
Then there was a different booster seat, and then a phone book. And then
Yeah.
finally, I could just sit on the chair.
Man.
And
Those are the
now
days.
I have to bring the chair down.
Now you do. Now
to
now
sit
you're
at
now
it.
you're a tall, lanky guy. All right,
Danny,
Queen.
this is a disaster. 93 Queen B1. I guess there's Rook D1. It's a disaster for White.
93 rook. He goes for it anyway.
Yeah, he just doesn't care. He just says, "I'm going to go after your A3 pawn. I don't need your
Wow.
rook. I'm happy to give up 2 minor pieces for the rook."
Such an interesting point to show that the initiative, obviously the ability to create threats more important than what we normally favor. The 2 pieces are usually good against the rook, but with black taking d3, playing queen b3, and if the trade happens, that b pawn just pushes up the board, and you don't or rook c3, right? The point is white just
Yeah.
doesn't have time to bring that bishop on g2, that knight on g3, the ones you're highlighting, back into the game. So Magnus flexing, Gukesh already under a minute on the clock. He's got 99 problems, and Magnus Carlsen is one of them.
Exactly. And that knight on g3 is just the worst piece in White's position. It has 0 prospect, and that's the problem with minor pieces. They're just not.
Oh, but now queen b1 is over. Now queen
Bishop
b1 is
f1, I guess, still holds on. But I mean, there must be a knockout here. Maybe bishop c3 at some point can be thrown in.
But even like queen b1 and rook c2, right? You just you bring the pieces in and you say, "Here you go. Here you go. How you like them apples, huh?"
I mean, anything. Queen b2, rook c2 immediately.
Oh, rook
just
c2
keep
immediately.
The pin. No, this is dead lost. And Magnus has so much time. His time management, Danny, we take it for granted.
Yeah.
But the world champion's time management might be the best of anybody at the top. Like, we almost never talk about Magnus getting into super severe time pressure in classical chess. And thus far in this blitz match, his phenomenal just sense of when to invest a long think is just so impressive. Bishop d4 check thrown in.
What's he going to do next? Move? Is it queen b1 or rook c2 again?
I would predict queen b1 because that threatens mate on g1.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can believe that.
Yeah, queen b1 threatens mate, forces bishop f1 in the same way that it was forced before, though, to be fair, to guard the rook on d3. True. And still rook c2 comes in. And so this is queen b1, rook c2, bishop takes d3, said by chat. Double Jared. Here it comes.
Yeah, rook c2. Yep. Yeah, this position plays itself here, which is pretty dejecting for Mr. Gukesh.
Yep.
What a disaster of a position. And now bishop d3.
Yeah, you can even play queen d1. Okay, no, he takes first.
Wait.
Queen. He's simplifying.
This is just vintage Magnus. This is so vintage Magnus. Rook a2. Oh, and you can't take
win
the
piece at the end. Oh my gosh. If bishop a4, rook a3, fork the bishop and knight on g3, everybody. That's why he had to give up the a pawn, and now Carlsen will push the a pawn. You got a baby girl, Anita. Anita's coming to a1, or Andrea, or any a name. I just made it up.
Well, that's like Daenerys' dragons. They're going to grow pretty quickly, and Gukesh just resigns.
Yep.
And now we're entering adoption territory.
Yep.
That wasn't fair. Gukesh never got off the ground on the king side. Like, he got his knight to g3. He did everything you're supposed to do, Danny. He made all the right moves, pressed all the right buttons, and then his attack just evaporated.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is harder to launch those King's Indian attack positions, those style positions against a fianchetto structure, and Magnus knew that, right? That h7, g6. I mean, I don't want to get too abstracted. It's not on the board anymore, but just your comments made me think in my head, going full chess player. Never go full chess player on a chess show. Robert Downey Jr. taught me that. Never go full chess player. But in my full chess player mode, the problem is, Danya, those types of attacks for white are much stronger in a traditional King's Indian attack where, let's say, black's bishop is on e7, right? The fianchetto structure is hard to attack with that type of formation, and we saw that Gukesh never really got anything there.
No, you're absolutely right. And Magnus just kind of going away from theory with this move a3, stopping the bishop from developing to b4, and now he fianchettos, which is very popular now in all e6 Sicilians to fianchetto the light squared bishop and just get a Sicilian that's more on the positional side.
Yep. Alexander Ivanov preferred these positions as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
In the
you know what I'm talking
about. Couple of kids growing up in the American chess circuit, right? Goichberg tournaments weren't healthy for anybody, let's be honest. But Alexander Ivanov, a grandmaster who played a lot of these structures. You can also play them with a4 for white. This is, as Don just said, it's positional. You still strive at times for the traditional. Here he goes. He goes back to a4. You can go for f4 at some point. The Scheveningen structure with the fianchetto setup for white is often very solid.
And Magnus just understands every type of position. It literally doesn't matter what you throw at him. He will know the typical plans and the typical ideas in literally every opening and every sub-variation. Something that we also take for granted, by the way, but something which is exceedingly rare, even at the highest level, to know as many patterns and as many ideas as Magnus knows. You know, it's like a restaurant where the menu encompasses every single cuisine and the chef, you know, is the best chef in the world at, you know, whatever cuisine you want. It's crazy.
There you go.
I don't know where that came from. That was
out of left field. Restaurant in Hungary with a lot of options. I'm thinking Cheesecake Factory. I don't know what you're doing afterward.
I love Cheesecake Factory.
So.
Except there's only one of them here, and the line extends to South Carolina. So,
all right, but we see this little maneuver. The knight goes from b5 to d4, followed by a double fianchetto setup. It's a very easy position for white to play. And, you know, again, to give our boy Robert Hess a shout out, we often look at the pawn breaks. It's hard for black to play d5 here, which is often a strike you want in a Sicilian because that bishop on g2 is primed and holding it. You can't play for a6 and b5, even though you'd like to. That's also a typical Sicilian break. But white's ahead of the game with a4, holding it back. Maybe even c4 is going to come here for Magnus. So
it is.
Again, you're highlighting it, and I'm just pointing out that this is a tough position because black's got pieces that look okay, but where's the breakthrough? Where do we give them some liberty?
No, this is just a buzzsaw kind of position. Rook from a1 coming to d1. Magnus opting for the bishop pair, which makes, I mean, the bishop on g2 is not the greatest piece in the world, but it's a solid bishop. It's protecting e4. e5 could come at an inopportune moment. Not yet, because black will push d5, and that transformation is in black's favor. But Magnus holds all the pawn breaks. I think he's going to drop his bishop back to b2 and maybe launch a kingside attack. There he goes.
H4 is a way to do that too. H4 is the alpha zero special. You advance that pawn, poke and prod a little bit. It'll come back to bite your opponent. I love your bishop b2. Go ahead.
PNP, poke and prod. No,
poke and prod.
I'm just saying what you said.
All day. Every day we shuffle. Okay, now we have a hedgehog without the fianchetto bishop for black. I don't know that I like a5. I like b5 quickly from Gukesh, even if it's not correct. I like the speed. By the way, he's up on the clock for the first time, and well, it's been a minute according to my watch since Gukesh was ahead on the clock.
What did you just say?
As I say that,
I actually think this idea of going a5 by Magnus is very instructive. I think he's going to go c4 and try to play against this a6 pawn, which he's fixed as a long-term weakness. But in order to get access to it, he has to eliminate the b5 pawn, which is, of course, its pawn cover. Yeah. So I think c4 is on the menu here, just to continue my restaurant analogy. c3. Ooh, wait, he blunders the pawn on b3.
That's a pawn.
That is a pawn. Give me that.
Take it, Gukesh.
That might have been a mouse. That might have been a mouse slip, actually.
Like he meant to play c4.
I mean, and Gukesh took a while there. Just
look at that.
Is that too good to be true?
That'll wake you up. You see that?
Oh, whoa.
No, he literally just went like, WTF? Why the face? As in case kids didn't know, that's what it means. Why the face?
Why the face?
Why the face? WTF?
Yeah, I used to think it means like FTW is for the win. I used to think it means win the 4. It's just like a typo.
You are about as adorable as.
I also thought Mississippi was a person, but C4.
What is Magnus going on? He's imploding. Magnus is falling apart here.
Yeah,
and
what is he doing?
He's like, shakes his head. He's laughing it off now because he took a position with
Bishop
all
D4,
the moves into a lost endgame.
0-1, and he's going to lose a piece too. He blundered a piece on top of everything else.
Yeah, bishop. Let's just show, or we'll just in your head or show rook d4, bishop d4.
Well,
the bishop on d6
on the board.
is hanging.
And if you go bishop e7, then Gukesh should go rook to d7 here.
And if rook d3, bishop f2. It happened.
Goodbye.
It's over.
Wow. No adoption. Great game by Gukesh. I mean, he just picked up the pawns Magnus was offering him.
And that means the hood is coming off. Magnus reveals a fully fluffy head of hair. How big can that hair get? We've done that meme before. Well, Gukesh strikes back, and it's not over yet. It's not over. It's not a Duma. It's not over.
Wait, who was that?
Welcome to California. It's not a Duma.
It's like one of those things. It's like you're setting a trap where like I have to get the reference or else everybody in chat's gonna start laughing at me, even though it's like Limp Bizkit or something.
Oh my God.
It's Robert Hessen, and my inside joke is Limp Bizkit. Because you made a Limp Bizkit reference and I didn't get it. That's like our stand-in for how Naroditsky doesn't get any common references.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's
get
Schwarzenegger.
To the chopper. Welcome to California.
Now that if you tell me it's Schwarzenegger, it makes sense. It just didn't, it just didn't occur to me naturally.
Okay.
I'm a Limp Bizkit, I know.
All right, it's 9-2. There likely will not be an adoption in this match. So for those who had the secret betting line on some website there, that not that I endorse or would approve that in any way, I'm just saying if there are betting lines that exist and someone had a side parlay that an adoption would occur before the 1 minute portion, you have lost, sir. You will not win your money back because there's not going to be enough games or time on the clock for Magnus to win 10 in a row.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we have a London system. Once again, I like Gukesh's position. What would really do wonders for his confidence, Danny, is a 2-game winning streak.
Yes.
Because beating Magnus more than once, and Magnus is frustrated. I've tried to make a conscious effort in commentary of making less observations about body language ever since Fabi gave an interview where I think he made an incredibly wise statement about like commentators overdoing it on the body language front. Plus, you're the Magnus body language whisperer. But he is frustrated, and this is the perfect time to exploit that. And he's playing very fast, is Gukesh.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere. We said it, right? 1 game at a time, And so you got to win. You're in a good position here with the bishop pair. You're up 40 seconds on the clock. I mean, can't ask for more at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 7-point match. Plays b3. No, this is good play by Gukesh. He's better out of the opening here. You can't really ask for more than a bishop pair, a space advantage on the king side. And in some positions, Danny, there are ideas of like knight g5, knight takes e6 here, which you can't fall asleep on.
Ooh, Mufasa.
I knew you would do that. I was just
knight g5 and knight e6.
Or knight e5.
Ooh, knight takes g6 potentially on the agenda.
Know.
There you go.
And maybe knight e4, c4, undermine those pawns and open up your bishop.
I like it. I like it for Gukesh. He's up a minute on the clock. Magnus is a little frustrated, head in hand, despite Fabi saying we read too much into it. With all due respect, Fabi, chess is a people-watching sport, and that's what people didn't understand forever. It's not just a chess-watching sport, and this is a Magnus who's frustrated.
And if we bring him to an analysis board real fast,
let's
play
do
knight
it.
d7, here's
Analysis
a perfect
board.
example of knight takes g6 working like a charm. FG, you could even throw in bishop takes d6.
Very nice.
Whoop, and everything is, I mean, both rooks, the bishop and the other rook.
Absolutely. I like it. Yeah. All right. That was fantastic. Queen c8, by the way, by Magnus, guards e6, preventing said tactics. Rook a7 also sort of prophylactic and aggressive in nature from Carlsen. You can put the rook on c7 and attack the c3 pawn.
I wonder if Gukesh should still play c4. I guess Magnus will play knight takes c4 there, because c4 dc walks into knight c6 with a fork against the bishop. Okay, we're about to find out.
Fabi.
Okay, we found out.
Any day, bro. Any day, bro. Chess is a people-watching sport, and you're welcome. Okay, for bringing the fans. I'm not saying that commentators don't sometimes read into body language that isn't there. I am saying that reading into body language is half of what makes watching you guys interesting when you're sitting there for 6 hours, brah.
Abby just said he'd fight you. I mean, we've got toxic super
Oh,
GMs in the chat.
I
What
knew
more could
for
we
some
ask?
reason I knew Favi was lurking, and I knew if I said that he would show himself. I literally had a feeling. I knew that he was lurking. You just got caught, Favi. Jebaited.
Next chess boxing match. Somehow Magnus has managed to stabilize this. So maybe c4 actually was premature. Now the rook coming to d7. So at this point for Gukesh, playing against Black's clock might be his best bet. Try to keep the tension. Improve your position bit by bit. Maybe play against the a6 pawn. This is what Magnus wanted to do in the previous game, except he blundered all of his pawns.
Yep. And then his piece. What a weird train wreck of a game that was last game.
I
don't feel like we doubled down on that against Magnus enough.
No. that was very odd. I mean, starting with c3, it was bad enough to blunder a pawn, but then he just followed up with his entire queen side.
But it's true for those who might just be tuning in. I mean, okay, I don't know that we're going to see an epic comeback, but one of the storylines has been Magnus is obviously up on the scoreboard, but he hasn't been super sharp today yet. And so when you see a game like that happen where the wheels came off, you worry if you're Magnus. You don't want to lose 2 in a row. I don't know that that's going to happen, but he is now under 30 seconds on the clock.
And he's still under serious pressure on the board. Your knight on d5 is a great piece, but you've got a long-term weakness on a6, and Gukesh has better placed pieces. Queen c6 might be unpleasant at some point. Look at how fast Gukesh is playing. I love this.
That's what you got to do.
I would throw in queen c6.
That's what you got to do. Move, Grandmaster, move.
Exactly. Queen b2
hits d4. Played. Good move from Magnus.
Okay.
That's a really good move.
Yeah, you can't blunder the rook, so maybe rook c2.
But then I take on d4 with the queen.
And the bishop
even if I lose a6, I feel like I can draw if I'm Magnus.
I mean, rook c2, queen d4, and then bishop takes d5 maybe. I mean, that a-pawn runs real fast.
Ooh.
But Gukesh now down to 30 seconds himself.
I like how you said real fast. Let's get ready to rumble. Oh, wait, I'm not allowed to say that. He'll sue me.
It's my announcer voice.
Bishop d5, queen d5, queen a6, rook d5. He's going to allow queen a6.
Well, he wants to go after the a-pawn, but white has a back rank check to pave the way for a6.
This is maybe the best game we've seen Gukesh play since game 1, where he did win his white. Queen c8 and a6.
Yeah, but now you're going to jinx him. You spoke the words.
Oh, no, knock on wood. I knocked on wood.
Blunder is coming. He's going for checkmate, I think, but queen a8 is a dead end. I mean, the king has the g6 square. Oh, rook h8, queen g8, though.
Oh, and the queen goes to h7. Backdoor, baby girl. Here we go.
Well, look at Magnus. Speaking of backdoor, he now has f6 as an escape square.
Oh, and queen f4 check is now coming from black. That was huge. Queen f4 check.
Anybody's game. Anybody's game. Rook e2, maybe.
Rook d5 cuts off the queen so the queen f4 can draw. He's going to play queen f4, queen e4, and take the draw. Rook d5 is a draw. Oh, 1 second move! Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Queen. Oh, he gave up the pawn. Oh, now Magnus is probably going to win.
Queen d6 check, trades queens if he wants it. 1 second for Gukesh.
Queen e5. Queen e5.
Queen e5 trades the queen. Oh, rook d4. He's got h5 check,
Magnus
though.
almost flagged.
1 second, 2 seconds.
Oh,
rook g4, h. Oh my god, knight.
G8,
get a knight. Oh, he couldn't to promote to a knight. That's hilarious.
I was thinking that too, but
not to say it mattered. But at least it was a check.
Girl.
Oh my gosh.
What a heartbreaker for Gukesh. It is all your fault. It actually all went downhill after you labeled that as a perfect game.
Don't try to pin this on me. You take your voodoo, you take your juju back. You take your voodoo back.
Okay, you focus on fighting Fabi.
I'll focus on fighting Fabi. You focus on throwing me under the bus when I'm not on camera with you and Robert. All right, do your job by throwing me under the bus when I'm not around.
Deal.
Any Hooters. Wow. Okay, the point is, Danya, we all just blacked out, and Magnus wins again.
Mufasa.
That was just wild. Oh man,
that was ridiculous. And that was honestly, I don't want to say most impressive game for Magnus, but to be able to turn things around at the drop of a hat like that, Danny, and then Magnus never just turns it around and draws it. He could have traded queens there in 6 different occasions, but he just knows exactly when he needs to squeeze things out and play for a win. It's an unbelievable talent, actually.
No, it really is. And it's a sixth sense, excuse me. Sorry, Haley Joel Osment. Almost said that movie with a list. Last good work you ever did in Hollywood. Just kidding. Sin City was also great. Sin City was also great. Thank you, Haley Joel. Any Hooters. It's a sixth sense that these guys have, especially the generation of these world's elite, Danya, who grew up online, right? There's an intuitive feel they have for the pressure and the willingness to play with just the increment on the clock. You are part of that generation too. You're also very good under time pressure. I will compliment you so you don't have to. It's one of the things that makes you so good in those moments. But obviously, these guys are doing it with all due respect on another level, right? Magnus, Hikaru, these guys are, and there's an intuitive feel they have to not take the draw there that is just like mind blowing in hindsight.
And we take so many things for granted. Another thing we take for granted, to piggyback off of your point, is how little they blunder. Not just how good they play in time pressure in general, but how little they blunder with no time on their clock. I don't understand how they do it. I mean, they get these super complicated positions, and their blunder rate is, of course, blunders happen in time pressure, but exceedingly rarely. With 2 seconds for the rest of the game. It's just nuts. It's honestly, these guys are just amazing.
Magnus inviting the G-pawn to fall, and you can already feel the wind being taken out of Gukesh's sail. Just look at the clock. What happened after that other win? Gukesh was confident. He was up a minute at one point in that last game, and then here goes Magnus stealing victory from the jaws of defeat, and now Gukesh is, kind of back in a position where he's a little worse, no longer up on time.
Love the move Bishop D3.
Chat, talking, remind you if you hold Alt when you promote, you can under-promote, even if you have Auto Queen on. We've learned that lesson the hard way.
Queen takes G2 would have walked into castle queenside, and you cannot afford to open up the G file with White's bishops. I think they're called Horowitz bishops. This is how it was at least taught to me, when you've got one bishop on the long diagonal and one on the B1H7.
I usually call them horror movie bishops, but, same thing.
Gukesh is about to star in a horror movie once these pawns get set in motion.
Are you a star in a horror movie if you die early in the movie? Hashtag Drew Barrymore. Hashtag, who was the famous actress who died in the beginning of Psycho?
Oh my gosh.
I'm not talking about the remake with Anne Heche. I don't even want to talk about that movie.
No. You're talking about the 60s original, the good one.
Yeah, Hitchcock. Anyway, are you a star if the movie starts with you dying because you set the tone for the narrative? I would argue yes. You are.
Wait, was it Jamie Lee Curtis?
Oh, no, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. That's right. It was her mom.
Oh, wow.
That's right. That's how you remember it. I forget her name, but she's a famous actress.
Tony Curtis was her dad. I forget the name, too.
Yeah. Anyway, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom died in the beginning of the original Psycho. Hashtag remembered that real good.
Okay. Crane.
Yeah, chat's going to get
Janet. Yeah. Okay,
Janet
thanks.
Lee? Okay, it was Scream where Drew Barrymore died, yes. All right, so knight b7 is played. The ponies are relocating, but all White has to do is Rekharovka, kingside. Here comes e5.
Nice.
Here comes e5.
No, but the knight coming to d6, I actually think Magnus's decision to play e4 was premature, as reflected in his time usage.
Okay. Yeah, fair. Yeah, because the more you say it, when the knight comes to d6, if e5 is played, you can trade on f5 and d5 falls.
Bingo.
Yeah, okay. I feel you.
Ooh.
I feel you.
Now there are tactics galore with a check on e3. Ooh, there's got to be something here. Maybe a sack on d5. Let's think. I'm drawing a blank, but you see what I'm saying. I mean, White's position is very flimsy, but if Magnus can castle kingside, everything magically resolves itself, and then White is much better. So Black has exactly one tempo to orchestrate something against White's king.
Yeah. Good call. Sam Jackson dying in that shark movie. It was Deep Blue something. No, that was a band in the 90s. Deep Blue something. Shout out to you counting blue cars. Deep Blue something, I think. Anyway.
No, it was Jaws.
Jaws. No, he doesn't. Sam Jackson is not in Jaws, bro. It's a movie where the sharks are super smart and they had some brain steroids or something. And Sam Jackson
gets outside my.
Yeah, it's deep. It's deep something. I know it was deep something.
Blue.
That was the computer. Okay.
That's what we call a joke.
G3 is played, and I like the dynamics of this position. Here's what's funny about this position, Don, is if you give White 2 moves, it's over. If White gets Bishop G2 and castles, and then just here comes everything. But Black senses that and is going to make things happen now while the king is still in the center. I like F5, even if the eval says a little better for White.
Well, speaking of Jaws, I mean, these 2 pawns, and Gukesh trying to kind of work his way around it. But, okay, Queen B3 hits the knight, defends the pawn. Magnus going more straightforwardly with Rook D1. There's also a discovery against the other bishop, Danny, but I don't think Gukesh is going to be able to handle this with no time. I think now Magnus can just castle and
Yeah.
even maybe allow knight takes g3.
Or king
Okay, king
f2.
f2.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
or
love
just
that
do it
move.
like a badass.
He walks into the face of danger, puts his running shoes on. Play
But now
rook,
queen e3 is
rook
a massive
hg1, I
threat.
think. You could also just take d4.
You could take d4, and then you give up e5, though. Wait. Now, maybe there's some sort of knight f4 action.
I see that the Smarter
what's
Chess
going
prediction
on?
has reached 100%. 100%. I mean, that's not
No!
really fair, but okay.
But
Queen f5.
Gukesh is losing the thread, and Magnus is consolidating again.
But only 5 seconds for Magnus. It's not over. Blunders do happen. Come on, Gukesh, put the pressure. Rook c. Oh, d2. Wait, Black was winning with rook c2.
Oh!
What is going on?
Wait, are you sure about that? D6? Magnus gives up e5? D7? D7?
1 second. 5 seconds. Rook e2 check and rook d8.
Knight g3. No, knight g3 is
Knight
an
g3.
idea.
Knight g3 is winning.
It's a huge threat. It's a huge threat.
He was in check, but
Oh
knight
my
g3 is
gosh.
coming.
Oh,
1 second. Move.
flag.
1.3. He moved with 0.3.
Oh, now Magnus has no time.
F3.
Move. Oh, he's gonna flag.
Oh, he lost that time. Oh, no, Gukesh. Oh, no.
Rook takes d7. He already did everything he had to do. He's totally winning. He's totally winning after Rook takes d7.
Take d7 and you win.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how I just turned into like a mom who's like lost her way finally in the bad scene of the movie where she's broken. No, I want my baby. Oh no.
Exactly.
Gukesh.
You can't, and that's the lack of experience speaking right there.
Yeah.
That's where it comes in. It's as you said, you've been using the term sixth sense.
Yeah.
Another sixth sense that super experienced blitz players have is you can tell when you have 0.5 seconds even without looking at the clock. You just know when you have to move.
Yep.
It's like, basketball players in the shot clock, to make another popular sports reference.
Yep.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right, we're back to the Italian. Now, remember, everybody, the one game, the first game Gukesh won in this match was on the white side of an Italian, a very different structure than the one we have here. But okay, we continue to look for a thread of hope here. We pull on that thread, just hoping there's like a prize at the end of it. At some point it gets harder to pull, and you're like, "Did I catch something?" Turns out, no, it was just slightly stuck on the angle. You got nothing. But yeah, 11-2.
Well,
Magnus Carlsen leads.
Yeah, and this is the last game before the break. Magnus driving his pawn into d4. So they have a repeat of, one of the two games that Gukesh won, that Italian game where he put his knight on d5. That was by far Gukesh's best game of the match. That was a phenomenal game.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he needed about 11 more of those games, and he's gotten 0.
Yep.
King h2, king h7. I like it.
King h2, king h7, eye for an eye. Don't hang the f7 pawn. Magnus plays bishop e7 to prepare f5, more than likely.
Yeah, black is better here again. I mean, Gukesh is not effective on the king side, and the queen side is completely dried up. Ooh. If you have to go king g2, that's not a good sign.
Gukesh is keeping his composure. I agree with you, chat. Also keeping it fresh with that white button down there. He always looks like he's about to go be someone's best man at a wedding. Can we just say that about Gukesh? Typically looks well coiffed.
Yeah, he is very well dressed. I actually have noticed that.
Yeah.
And he's impeccably classy, but this kind of match would get to anybody. And he's much worse again. I mean, Magnus is playing so effortlessly at this stage of the match. Oh, there's that water again. There's that Isklar.
I see Diamond member Symphonic Knight, who's chatting on the chess.com chat directly, asking when MBL would face Magnus if it gets that far. I don't know. No one wants to face Magnus. But yes, you're asking an interesting question because MBL is the only person ever in history to beat Magnus Carlsen in the Speedchess Championship.
Mm-hmm. And for now, it's going to stay that way. White is like dead here.
Yep.
Danny, e4 is coming next to a theater near you. And I don't see a single way to defend against that threat. If only you could bring your knight back to d2, but white is one tempo too short.
Yep. It's really true. The little things start getting you here when you're one tempo behind always, one maneuver behind, one positional blockade behind. You almost have to play G4 to kick the bishop and then put your queen on you. I can't even complete it because it feels wrong coming out of my mouth.
Well, G4 bishop takes G4 doesn't help cause, and
He
he just
goes, oh,
wandered it.
okay, well, there you go. I guess I unfortunately willed it into existence for Gukesh.
You did.
Danny's commentator curse strikes again.
Oh, and look at this line. Rook takes F3, Queen E4, Rook takes F2, and Rook F8 is
Oh,
basically made.
my lands.
There you go. You're learning.
Getting a little sketchy around here when Danny starts
You have
making all my lands reference.
There are 0 moves.
Oh, he goes for it. We're going to see it on the board.
Look
Rook F2. Magnus finds it. Oh, he finishes in style. Oh.
And Gukesh saw that. There was just like no other moves. So he was just playing hope chess at that point.
No, it makes sense.
Gosh.
It's
what a drubbing.
It's hurting a little bit. Gukesh knows it's a halftime break. Magnus apparently didn't eat before the match started. Missed the memo on proper, body management because he has been stuffing his face. I think that's the 3rd banana he's had today. We are going to take only our second break of the day. Obviously, we've still got a lot ahead here. There is the back half of the 3-1 portion and ultimately bullet. So don't go anywhere, everyone. Lots of instructive moments, but it is the Magnus Carlsen show we are watching. It is the SCC in the year of 2022, and Danya and I will be right back.
Chess Kid is fun. Chess is great for the brain, but it's also fun to play. And Chess Kid makes it easy to have fun. Whether your child is a total beginner or a prodigy, they can hop on and find a well-matched opponent from around the world at any time. Chess Kid is the safe, parent-approved way for your child to play chess online. Chess Kid is educational. To kids, it feels just like playing, but chess is a great way to learn patience, strategy, and critical thinking. Chess Kid features a comprehensive training program that guides kids to level up on their way to mastery. There are more than 50,000 chess puzzles and a whole library of entertaining videos that teach strategies, tactics, openings, and endgames specifically for kids.
5-time world chess champion. He's good at everything according to our insights. Your thoughts, Danya, on Magnus Carlsen right now?
Well, I'm just going to echo what I said earlier. It's human nature to let up a little bit when you're up by 4 or 5. That's why we see a good amount of comebacks in the SEC. We see players go up big, and then they kind of slip a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not Magnus Carlsen. The more he wins, the better he becomes. He wasn't tactically as sharp at the beginning of the match, Danny, but the speed with which he just saw Rook takes F2, what's scary is that Magnus is just getting tactically better as the match is progressing. And, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As does the score.
As does the score. 4-1 currently. We still have 30 minutes left in the 3-1 portion for those just getting here. We got a lot of chess ahead. And, it's funny because we all like to see the close matches. We like to see those matches that have us on the edge of our seat. Armageddon tiebreakers. Shout out to you, Aroni and Andrekin. But we also like to see greatness. Everyone does, right? It's why we tune in when you see the best in the world doing what they do. Mm-hmm. And what will Magnus be capable of today? What will the young Gukesh in 5 years? Will someone like Gukesh be the dominant player in the chess world, winning tournaments and winning SEC matches? When we were in Toronto, Danya, for the Global Championship, I was asked by one of the reporters there from India, I think it might have been Chess-Based India, asked mm-hmm. with all the young upstarts from India in the SEC this year, Iragaisi, Gukesh, Nihal Sarin, was this the year they finally start getting it done? And I gave him the honest answer. I think they're still a couple of years away, but it's only a matter of time, I think, before one of these absolute monsters from India, starts winning the SEC and many other events.
Yeah, for sure. And we still have Nihal Sarin, who, I'm a huge fan of, and he is just a force to be reckoned with. Of course, Arjun Erigaisi just put forth just a wilding performance at Tata Steel, but meeting his match in Fabi. So yeah. There's just so many insane players in the SEC. The older generation ain't going to give up the reins that easily. No. I
love calling Fabi part of the older generation. Is he still here? Bobby, you hear Don? You just said he just called you part of the older generation.
He's not letting that comment generation
without LOL. I mean, even Magnus is part of the older generation, and he has looked a little off today. Like I said, hand on shoulder, rubbing out that old pawn pushing injury. You can hurt yourself playing chess these days.
Hey, it's a compliment from one old guy to another, Fabi.
One old guy to another. But yeah, we've had a lot of people watching comments for a guy like Fabi who says chess is not a people watching sport. LOL. Anyway, what can Gukesh do to just start feeling good? One game at a time. Here he's black in a kind of looks like a reverse sort of hedgehog structure, excuse me. You can play c5 here next and kind of cramp down on d4 and b4. It's not a bad position for black if you can keep that space advantage.
Yeah, and we haven't talked as much about the openings, largely because, Magnus has steered the game away from theory, as he usually does. But even when he's done that, he's still better. He's getting the best of all worlds, Danny. I mean, he's got the bishop pair. He's got a clearly better position out of the opening, and he gets something non-theoretical. So I thought Gukesh actually started off the match on a very good note, theoretically wise. But as the match has progressed, he's played right into Magnus's hands in every opening. Just look at Magnus just sitting back in his chair, blitzing out the moves. He's already up a minute. The narrative just keeps repeating itself, and he's even got knight b7 if you wanted it.
Ooh, and now he's got e4, but there was a blunder there on this
knight
last
b7.
move. Yeah, it just hangs the a pawn.
Which Magnus didn't even... Why would you take free pawns? Come on.
You could have done it, but e4 is also good because I don't know that knight b7 is going anywhere, right? Grab a Snickers.
That's the terrifying thing about
we got all day. Knight b7 can still come.
Oh, God. Magnus just going h4. No better way to assert your dominance in a position than just to be able to play a move like that and still be much better.
By the way, knight b7 is still a possibility. Magnus doesn't even want the pawn.
He wants Gukesh to play f4 so that he activates his light squared bishop through h3. I think that's why he's keeping his knight on c5.
You called it. Look at you.
I have my
Magnus
moments.
whisperer, you.
I have my moments, and I think now he's going to go knight e6, and so G takes f4. And this is a very unpleasant position.
G takes f4. Draw that diagonal, baby. Show him the pin. The bishop on b2 dominates. No, the diagonal.
Style.
Diagonal.
Okay.
Here you go. G takes f4.
Diagonally. I saw the move queen c5, and it occurred to me that that's a very Magnus-esque kind of way to resolve the tension.
That's true.
I can guarantee
if king g7, he'll play queen c5.
I'm calling it.
Yeah.
Even if rook g7, I'm calling it. He's going to go queen c5.
If rook g7, he plays gf4. I'll call it.
Oh,
it doesn't matter because you guys Oh, man.
God.
Again.
Damn, girl.
Again, though, it shows the fighting spirit. Like, we're not beating up on Gukesh before the rabid faithful from India start bagging on us. That's not what we're doing. We're literally in awe of this generation coming up. Seriously, Take the pitchforks home. I say this because I've been doing this for years. Relax. But right now, Gukesh is clearly, obviously up against it, as many people have been against Magnus. And I'm actually going to say complimenting Gukesh and saying that he resigns that game, Danya, because he still wants to have a chance in this match. He doesn't want to just get beaten over the head with a hammer. He wants another game to have an opportunity, right? You have to compete against the clicking clock, right? The counting down clock above their webcams there is just as big of a problem as the scoreboard. And I like that he resigns. Why torture myself?
Listen, this isn't easy. And, no matter how stalwart of a Magnus fan you are, it's, you're down by 10. You're kind of walking into the narrative, and this is not how Gukesh envisioned it. So I have to compliment him for not tilting. He's doing his best, and just sometimes you're playing a confident Magnus, and there's just no scarier opponent than Magnus when he's feeling it. It's just unstoppable. It's crazy.
Agreed. They like my word.
Complimenting.
It's like when you're trying to mentor and compliment, a mentoring compliment, or is it you're mentioning it? I'm not that I would be a mentor for Gukesh. But I was acknowledging that I think that he has it in him. He has the fight in him, and he doesn't want this to be, a cakewalk for Magnus. He wants more games. Give me more opportunities.
Let's also pause for a second and note that Gukesh is still 16 years old. That's crazy. I mean, how many years he still has until we even start talking about him reaching his prime? Already well over 2,700, already established. I mean, some of these players just have such bright futures. It's nuts.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
Another hedgehog.
Another hedgehog. We've seen a lot of double fianchettos starting at the 3-1 portion. That's what the hedgehog is defined as for those who don't speak chess too good yet. You got double bishops on G7 and B7, double bishops on B2 and G2. Double fianchettos, double the fun. Taste the replacement of double mint gun. This segment brought to you by Double Mint Gun, who will soon be sponsoring double fianchetto positions in chess.
Wow, that was beyond smooth. That delivery.
Double mint gun is underrated.
Double mint. I thought single mint gun was underrated, but that's not what the cool kids are talking about, apparently.
Oh man. Queen takes G2. The end game has been invited for Gukesh. I like it, actually. By the way, knight B5 is a move Magnus can't afford to miss. Right? There's a spot coming for knight to B5 at some point. I know E2
the rook
falls,
is in some trouble.
but the rook is in trouble.
Yeah, that rook is kind of similar to what Hikaru had trouble with in his pivotal game against Wesley in the CGC. When the rook is in front of the pawns like that, it's a very, very vulnerable spot because the rook can never really go back.
Right.
And here comes Gukesh with this knight. White is better here for sure. And Magnus swinging it to A5 like nothing's the matter. B4, rook A6. Perfectly safe. What could be better?
B4, rook A6. We're going to see it. Oh, he trades queens first. Can he go to G5? No, he's got to go to A6. This just, how is he playing this? This is crazy.
And I was half sarcastic in saying that nothing could be better. That rook is actually very well placed, Danny, because B5, rook A5, and the knight on C3 is actually tied down to the pawn on A2, whereas you're going to have problems with the other pawn after rook C8.
Super true.
Oh my God.
One instructive idea you can go for here as white is move like A4, and then you're threatening A5, and if B takes A5, you play B5, right? And you're trying to create a problem for the rook while you expand your sort of mini 3-on-2 majority over there on the queen side. But G5 doesn't look great. Now there's bishop takes C3 and rook takes A2 in addition to the G5 pawn.
Exactly. And rook C8, the old idea. I think Gukesh was trying to squeeze in some sort of knight D5 move, but he's got weak pawns now on both sides of the board. And again, look at the clock. He's down 90 seconds in a 3-minute game.
Magnus is not going to miss his opportunity to free the rook. Free Willy.
Yeah, this is okay. Rook A6. Maybe you can try to halt the progress of the A pawn. The last thing you want to allow is a pass pawn on the king side, on the queen side.
Yep. If you could somehow get B5, rook A6, and then march that king from F3, E4, D5, C6, I understand. I'm playing imaginary chess, and Magnus is like, no thanks, Dan. I'm going to play A5 before you get B5.
Yep. And Gukesh expanding on the king side, but with 16 seconds left, we've seen these types of endgames so many times. Magnus just never misses his chance here.
Here comes the A-pawn. Here's Johnny.
Do you think this might motivate Gukesh to play more online? Or is he just sort of focused on class? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. And his results speak for themselves. But I'm curious if this will be a slight impetus for him to play a little bit more blitz, maybe in preparation for next year's SCC.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you view it, I guess. I mean, the truth is that with more and more money in online events and more opportunities to play in events that matter, right, online, I think, we've seen a massive changing of the guard. So the reality is the narrative that before that said, I'm not going to waste my time with online, just doesn't seem to work anymore because there's probably more prize opportunities, more events that matter online. And obviously the game is evolving that way. So, I mean, obviously, to me, the answer is yes. You should be looking to do that. But at the same time, I think we're in a weird spot, Danya, where I think some of these youngsters like Gukesh, okay, by the way, this game is getting spicy. He's only got 5 seconds, but he is winning. So let's focus on that before we finish the answer. Gukesh is winning. And this is one that he could actually play despite the time. Knight F5.
Wait, no, but Magnus is black.
Oh, Magnus is black. I lost my focus. LOL, I blacked out.
I do that all the time. No, Magnus is winning because the rook is coming to D2.
Okay, no, but obviously Magnus is winning the whole time. I as I was talking, I forgot who's who.
King A1, and there's a stalemate idea.
Stalemate.
Give up the bishop. No, he's going to flag again. Okay, but it's obviously Magnus wouldn't take the bishop even if he offered it in that case.
Yeah. When you self-stalemate, you still need your opponent to take your pieces.
That's not a good move. Allowing bishop takes F3.
And DC4. And the structure is not so ideal, is it?
No, it's not all chat.
No. And what I was going to say is you have a generation of players like Gukesh who are also being coached by the generation who before them, came from a space where they wanted them to focus more on classical, right? And I think there's a little bit of a shifting of the guard there where I think some players prefer to play less online. Some players have sort of embraced it. I personally think that the proof is in the pudding when you look at guys like Carlsen and Nakamura who grew up playing online, right? And I don't believe that fast time controls are bad for your chess because guess what? If they were, the best players in the world would also not be the best players at bullet and the best players at blitz. Like Magnus isn't just the best classical chess player in the world. He's also the best at just about every other time control, right?
Think about Ali Reza Farouja also. Another example of someone who literally grew up just playing 30-second chess all day, and he ain't doing too bad, is he? Sorry, Danny, continue.
No, you're adding to the point, which is the same point, right? And I think it doesn't mean there aren't opportunities or a time and place to focus on different muscles of your chess game, but the answer is when there's $100,000 on the line and many more where that came from, right? You need to be in a position to keep these matches close because it's worth a lot of money. So,
yeah, and there's just so many examples of players of the young generation who they play a lot online. They're good at all the mouse tricks. Nihal Sarin comes to mind. I mean, he's unbelievably fast, and yet if you look at his classical chess style, he doesn't play superficially. He's actually an incredibly deep positional player.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm honestly such a big fan of Nihal. Is he just manages to find the balance and do everything. I mean, he's ridiculously fast. He's good at tricky tactics, which appeals to my sensibilities. I won't mention why, but he maintains the depth of his style. It is possible to have your cake and eat it too.
I agree. And well, doesn't that speak of someone like Magnus Carlsen, right? Just because Magnus is fast and knows how to be resourceful and trick his opponents online doesn't mean he's not playing high quality positional chess. So, and I really like Nihal's game too. I mean, I said when we were in Toronto that I feel like of all the young Indian players, he somehow, I think Praggnanandhaa, Gukesh, and I'm not taking anything away from Iragaisi, any of them, right? But I feel like Nihal has a bit of an edge factor when I see him play.
Nihal is so fun to watch.
Yeah. And I will not be surprised if he moves on to the quarterfinals. He after this match here, he will be the last young Indian player still standing, I believe. I haven't looked at the bracket in a minute, but I think so.
Yeah, he's going to have to carry it forward, but he has quite the track record in both the JSCC and the SCC, having defeated the likes of Alexander Grishuk, and of course, having defeated a couple of pretty decent players in the CGC en route to the finals.
Yep. All right, so what we have here is an imbalanced affair for the ages. A tale as old as time, my friend. A battle of bishops and knights. Knights versus bishop. Who is better?
What movie is that?
There's no movie. When I'm talking about a tale as old as time, I like to talk with an accent that puts me in a place of.
Then when you are making a movie reference, you have to realize who you're dealing with here. Total ignoramus, I mean, you've seen less movies than Gary Kasparov, and it's saying a lot.
It's weird for you to refer to yourself in the third person, Gary.
In the third person, often. Yeah. I do it all the time. Okay, H66. Magnus driving that H pawn up, opening up the file.
Is he going to go G4?
Rook H1.
Is he going to go G4?
He might, and I think he very well. Yeah, because knight takes F4, king F3,
and you're winning.
And both
pieces.
knights are hanging. Great
G4 and G5.
You. Let's go. Buckle your speed belts.
You don't really want to take D5 and then play G4, but I'm thinking of this like just G4, G5. Here come the bishops. Here come the fun.
Magnus is calculating it. You can kind of sense the wheels turning.
Yeah.
And he's a perfectionist. A lot of players would just kind of, in this match situation, whatever, I don't really have to calculate it. Magnus wants to strive for perfection in every game. And that goes back, Danny, to your point about watching greatness and not always just watching a match because you're expecting to see overtime. That's not the only way to enjoy a match like this.
Yep. You see a lot of instructive moments, a lot of opportunities to apply things to your game. By the way, he does go for G4 and spying this diagonal idea. This is super tricky for black. G4 may have been better before bishop D5. I don't know, but we won't criticize Magnus here. He's in a pretty good spot.
Yep. And now you could throw in F takes G6 if you want an endgame. Now I thought maybe rook e1 and queen d5 check picks up the f pawn with interest,
But
but
there's maybe queen f3 and I get c6. No, but then you have
yeah.
queen g4, so who knows?
Yeah.
Eh,
G
very
takes f5.
interesting. You say interesting when you don't know what's going on, but it makes you sound smart.
Right. Interesting is one of those favorite go-to words of chess players that only chess players like to use in any situation.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
I get
so
interesting. Yes. It's such a
Interesting,
funny
yes.
word. Chess players are obsessed with like a set of words that
Yeah.
stem from uncertainty.
Right.
Right. But you
It's
don't
true.
exactly want to say you're uncertain. So,
By the way,
but
we're getting
okay,
the
I
line
think
I
comes
was-
from the same thing.
I agree. You're getting the line
Yeah,
I was
you called
calling
it.
for with queen f3. But okay, Gukesh trades what? Oh, it was rook e7 first? I wonder why.
It's interesting game, yeah?
Interesting. Okay, rook e7.
But I mean, okay, rook e7, rook e6, interesting complications.
Yeah, this is a rook ending. A rook ending that's good for white.
Yeah, that's
And,
interesting. Rook d3, rook b3, maybe? No,
Another
no,
one-
no, 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 no. That's not the way, Gukesh.
You can check
Huh.
on c7 or play rook b6 first.
Yep,
oh,
rook
wait,
b6
hold on,
and c6. Rook f7, maybe.
Rook f7. That'll do the trick.
But you have to reckon then with the possibility of black getting connected passers. I just feel like white might have triple pawn. White's gonna have Irish pawns. White does have triple pawns. I didn't even realize that.
Is Irish pawns a term you're allowed to make? I don't understand that.
I haven't gotten canceled for it yet, but
I don't
you never
understand.
know.
I don't even understand what it means.
I don't know. It means triple pawn. Like it's been introduced to me as triple pawns, but I don't know exactly what it stems from. Oh,
Okay.
Gukesh giving up all of his
All right.
pawns.
Here he goes. We won't.
Goodbye. Rook b3, b5. Close your eyes and win.
Yep. And the king marches from e4 to
And
d5.
another
Gukesh
one.
doesn't even want to see Magnus play it out.
And another one.
And we see a 13-game lead for the world champion. Smarter Chess Stats had a margin of victory similar to what we are on pace for here. And again, that's what match play is all about, especially fast match play, where these wait. G3 and then G4?
See, that's what I wanted to see from Gukesh early in the match. This is how I thought he should have played from the very beginning.
Yeah.
These types of ideas.
Agreed. G3 and then G4. And by the way, the eval bar is not lying, right? Those hips don't lie.
Nope.
White has a bit of an edge here within attack. You can play H4. It's one of the risks of this early castles for black in these Queen's Gambit declines as modern chess players understand it. You wouldn't see this happen 50 years ago, but these computers, right, the machine learning, neural net, artificially intelligent overlords have said, go aggressive or go home. And that G-pawn is often just thrusted now. Shout out to you, Mohamed Yar of Daddy Shock. And let's go for an attack.
It's pretty loco, but it's working out perfectly. Magnus didn't react too well.
And I agree. This is the practical approach we want to see from Gukesh. Get some pressure. Can you just take d5?
You absolutely can. That's a free pawn, and another one might be coming. Magnus is basically saying, look, white is suffering from a lack of development, and now white's king doesn't have too many safe prospects, but it doesn't need to have safe prospects because look at black's king.
Yep. I'm surprised Gukesh took with the pawn instead of the knight, but I guess he still wants to take on e4.
Yeah.
Knight d to f6.
Well, bishop h6, of course.
Knight d to f6, bishop h6. Yeah.
Now, you might have to move your king if you're Magnus. If you put your queen on f6, then I think white's going to take twice, using the fact that the knight then does not have the f6 square.
Very nice. Like it. I love it. I want some more of it.
This right here is exactly what Gukesh wants. You have to drag Magnus into positions where he's relatively uncomfortable. And Magnus and uncomfortable don't really go together in any sentence, but this is as good as it gets.
If they do, he'll just switch his chairs or switch to the couch. He's uncomfortable. He just switches chairs or couches. Okay, knight df6 allows bishop takes h6. I couldn't tell if that was a fake laugh by you or not, but either way, I appreciate it. My kids do that for me too.
My laugh is always genuine, Danny. When you say something funny, I would never stoop so low as to engineer a fake laugh.
Takes e4
I just wouldn't
first.
laugh. It wasn't funny.
Why not take h6 first?
I think knight g4 maybe was on the horizon.
Okay. And there wasn't like rook g4, f g4, queen e4, takes h6, queen g6.
A lot of minor pieces hanging, though,
Yeah.
including the knight on f3 in that position.
Okay, fine.
Touche. Okay, now bishop h6 again. There's knight g4, and then maybe your idea is more pertinent in that position
of queen e4 right there. No, but queen e4, knight h6. You have to play rook g. Wait, no.
Okay.
You can play bishop g7, and if king takes h3 and the knight is pinned.
That's a cool idea.
I don't know.
I mean, knight e5 is more pedestrian, but also probably possible. Let's show bishop h6 on the analysis board.
Yeah.
Bishop h6, knight g4.
Yeah.
Queen e4.
Uh-huh.
No, but queen e4 I can play knight h6.
That's what I was saying. So you have to take g7, but then
but you don't have time for h3 because the knight is saying
so
you have
play
to go
queen e4
here.
now.
Yeah, but this type of position is already okay. Maybe not queen f6, maybe bishop f5. But
then
is
rook
this really
g4.
necessary?
So
rook f4. Rook f4. That's a nasty one.
I mean, you still see the eval bar being as close as it is, just to show that it's not an easy position for black. And given that Magnus is down a minute on the clock, I'm still giving Gukesh pretty good chances here. He didn't go for the most aggressive option of bishop h6, but you have to keep the pressure. You got to keep the funk. Let's go.
The problem here is that if black can consolidate, then white's finally going to, pay the price for that early g4 move. Of course, Gukesh could orient himself toward queenside castle, but clearly that doesn't solve all of his problems.
Well,
bishop f5 is coming. He is doing it.
Orienting he shall, and he does. Rekarovka, Длинная Rekarovka.
Длинная Rekarovka, молодец. Nice.
Хорошо.
Okay, knight takes d5. What is he waiting for? Whoa!
Wait.
No,
that knight is pinned on the d file. Give me pins or give me death. Let's go. Come on, Gukesh.
Maybe there was a better move than e3. Maybe bishop b4.
That's what I wanted. I wanted pressure on that knight while there was still a pin with the queen and the rook. Rook on d1 spying them. Oh, bishop b4 is coming.
c5, but after bishop c5 and bishop g8, Danny, I could take and then pin your queen in the end. That's the downside of castling queenside.
Analysis board. We have to show that real quick.
Bang, bang.
Knight b6, bishop b4, c5, chop, chop, bishop g8, doing the lady.
But
and
the
rook
line
c8.
isn't over. Rook a8 and pin the queen.
That's so frustrating.
And pull me a Guinness, please.
That's
right,
literally not what you would say there with that accent. That is literally not what you would say. Gosh, we have so much work to do.
The Irish are not happy with me today.
All right,
Irish
knight b6
pawns,
played.
Bad accent.
Okay, Magnus is under 10 seconds, though. I'm openly rooting for Gukesh here to get the dub. No shame. Let's go.
I wonder what kind of pawns we're going to get after f takes e4.
It's my island. What does he say in Braveheart? He's like, that's my island. I can't even do the Irish accent.
I'm the right person to ask what somebody says in an obscure
That
movie.
guy saved that movie. We were way down the rabbit hole of Mel Gibson monologuing.
Whoa!
He takes and plays c4?
No, he didn't take. Why didn't Gukesh take on e4? Now queen takes c6, and he's given Magnus a chance to consolidate. Unbelievable.
And you can even take f3 now if you're black.
So white has to take back with the queen, but now Magnus is totally fine with this bishop out of the game.
Okay, but here comes rook g7. 5 seconds for Magnus.
He has to defend that pawn. Queen e7 probably. Whoa!
g5. And we live. Hey, Canty, here we go. Play e4.
He can play e takes f3. He can get away with that. Only Magnus.
Play e4. And then h4. E4, because the queen guards f2 as well. Yes. Now h4. Just do it.
You called it. I think h4 is the only way. You have
there
to
you
get
go.
the
Let's
bishop
go.
off of g6. But Magnus is going for his vintage queen trade.
Magnus!
So frustrating. And now I think Gukesh is losing control of the game, but he gets his king up just in time.
Okay, 5 seconds.
Rook f1. No, he's back in charge.
Rook f3. No, okay. White has the bishops.
And e5 is coming, but careful, don't blunder your bishop.
I like this remaneuvering of the bishop. Here comes e5 now. Bishop f3, bishop c6.
Time pressure. Bishop g2, bishop h3.
I love this. Good play by Gukesh. Bishop c5 check. Yes, force the king back. King e5.
Yeah, but
here you go.
Knight d7. No!
Oh, no. I messed it up.
Now Magnus has the outside passer. I don't know who's better here. White's got 2 passers, and they're more mobile. But Black's got the outside passer.
And you have to be careful of this A5, B4, C3 idea. Here it comes
And
from
there
Magnus.
it comes. He's got to go back. But now bishop F7, bishop E6 is so nasty to trade off the bishops. No, he's going to lose.
No.
He's let the H-pawn slip.
No. Oh, Magnus blundered. He had
Okay.
H3. What's going on? 4 seconds for Magnus. 3 seconds. 2 seconds.
He goes B4 first. And whoa, he breaks.
He's going to play A4. Oh my gosh.
He's got trousers. But so does Gukesh. G7
Who's
is coming.
winning?
G7. White's winning.
Who's winning?
White's winning.
It's mate for white.
Where's the mate, though?
I don't
Queen
know,
F8?
but it's got to be there.
Oh, he got
Oh
it.
my god, he made it
Oh
in C6. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Oh no.
He cannot catch a break. He did everything to win that game.
Oh.
What was King D6?
He was completely winning.
just Queen F8, Queen D6, Danny, and then E6.
Oh.
Like literally anything was winning there. And, oh my god.
And Magnus takes a drink of the water. I slide down in my chair.
That is absurd.
Absurd. Absurd.
Absurdistan,
Oh.
Mufasa.
Oh, Mufasa. Say it again.
Dude, after that game,
Mufasa.
I have 3 mice on my table. I think they would have been in 800 pieces after that. Oh my
Mufasa.
gosh. It's 16-2.
Mufasa.
That is ridiculous.
Magnus. Yeah, this is going to be the last match of the 3+1 segment. After this, of course, we will have Bullet. Shout out to Captain Edie with the 3-month subscription. I just saw chat for the first time. Shout out to all of our subscribers who might be subscribing throughout the day that we didn't call out. I just looked at the chat. Bro, Magnus destroyed. Yes, chat, there is destruction going on. I really want to see someone take that moment from Lion King with the hyenas and dub it over to be Magnus instead of Mufasa. Say it again. If someone throws that at me, you get a 1-year diamond membership on Twitter.
Okay.
Throw me a little Photoshop, little GIF action. Mufasa is
800
Magnus,
people
and
just
you
got
get
to
a diamond.
Holy smokes. Queen C6 mate. That's going to be in Gukesh's nightmares tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Queen H1 a C6 mate. But good play here for Gukesh. He's not tilting.
Yeah, good position.
He actually is still giving it his all. And, you know, it would do a lot for his confidence to end the 3-minute segment with a win. Obviously, the result of the match not really in question. But hey, there is enough time, I think, to play 13 bullet games. So you never know.
You never know. You never know. Bishop to G7
Okay.
from Gukesh. You're right. This is a good position for black. The E5 pawn is a target. White also fine, but Gukesh is he hasn't tilted. I think I saw chat say earlier, we were mentioning he's keeping his composure, always looking good, looking dapper, but this is a tough spot to be in.
It most certainly is. It's unenviable. You're just looking at the match score, you know, and again, you know, you don't get an easier opponent in the bullet. You just get the same opponent again.
Same
and again.
opponent. We
Same
should do a
Magnus
little bit of
Carlsen
like
guy.
the masked singer. How about next time we do a side event for SCC? It's the SCC, except when it gets to bullet, you don't know who your teammate is. You get up and someone else sits down. Could be anybody, right? Could be me. I have to
see
play
what
the
you're
bullet.
By the
Then,
way, Magnus is kind of having a meltdown here in this final game.
Yeah, this is going to get Gukesh the dub he needs to head into the bullet to keep
Yeah,
us
this is
all
a
on the edge of
disaster.
our seats.
Magnus is dropping the pawn on E5, and once that pawn drops, the floodgates open.
Yeah.
Gukesh better take that pawn, or else we're going to have a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Gukesh. Thank you,
Okay.
Gukesh. ASMR.
If Magnus recovers from this game, I'm running out of adjectives to describe how I'm going to be.
You hungry? You hungry for victory? You hungry?
I am hungry. Some
No.
Lebanese food would really hit the spot right now.
Yeah, Magnus is the one eating this whole time. Someone should tell him, like, you know, hey, save some room for later, Augustus.
He was doing well. MVL is like the originator of the meme, right? Just like the whole snacking while
Yeah.
playing thing. He's just incessant.
And I remember when he won that match the first time we were commentating on it. It was back in 2017. And like we had him show his spread. He literally had made himself like a charcuterie board. It was like cheese and like
Wow.
meats and like nuts. I was like, what is going on here? This is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to make sure though that whatever you eat during a match isn't like greasy, because there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than having to wash your hands after every bite that you take, because then your
Right.
laptop.
Plus, it increases the
You
chances
know.
of a mouse slip, right? I mean, the sporting aspect of chess
Yep.
cannot be underestimated in these online formats. It is true. Like, there's a sporting, it's not exactly the traditional sport, esports, I guess, but there's a sporting aspect to how these guys handle their time pressure, and you don't want your fingers greasy. Back.
Nope. You don't want pieces of chicken fingers stuck on your keyboard in critical moments.
Abso-friggin-lutely.
Okay.
All right, Bishop B1 here. Kangaroos walkabout.
I have a bad feeling about this game on Gukesh's behalf. I
Don't
don't know
say it.
why.
Don't
I don't
say
know
it.
why.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me. You shut your
I
mouth.
ain't the prophet for nothing. They call me that for a reason.
Hey, shushing your mouth.
You
right
shut
now.
your mouth.
Don't you
boy.
dare call a Magnus come back here.
Rook c3, maybe try to get some counterplay down the c file. But Gukesh could actually park his king on b6 even, and support the knight with rook c8 and close the doors on the
more
queen
the
side.
time ticks, the more I get nervous about what you said.
Uh-oh. And this is just what Magnus does. He just never, ever, ever dies. Doesn't matter how many pawns you win. You'll find a way to mix things up.
Mufasa.
King b7,
Rook
maybe?
C1, King B7, get
nice
out.
play by Gukesh.
That was good.
C2.
All right. Play G3 if you're Magnus, just hold on to the pawn and make Gukesh blunder.
Wonder and maybe blunder.
Yeah, just like put the pressure back on the kid. He's got 30 seconds. That's what I would do if I was Magnus. I'd play G3 and just sit tight. Although, is 94
rhymes?
coming and just simplifying?
I'm just trying to find a word that rhymes with blunder and wonder. Well, black is going to tear white asunder. What was that? With the move d4.
Down under.
Then queen d2 is his idea, but then knight e4. I think knight e4 ends it.
Queen D2, knight E4 is a
It's
fork
over.
of the queen and rook. That is a forking
It's-
problem last time I checked.
I'm slipping. My prophetic Gukesh just spat in the face of my so-called prophetic powers.
Hey, it's okay. We're not going to hold it against you.
I have to make some controversial claims. Yeah, it's over. Knight d4, he's going to give up a piece. Just queen takes d4 even is simple. Resign time. Knight d3? No, then rook takes d3, rook takes c1. Yep. Good calculation.
Yeah.
And Gukesh
Yeah.
with the on.
It's like he's trying to lean into the meme here.
You sure he came out of the shower in the beginning of the match? I mean, every time that hair gets crazier.
You shower, you put on a hoodie, you take off the hoodie.
Yeah, but you comb your hair after the shower.
You should comb your hair.
That's actually the point of showering.
Yeah.
Your hair is more combable.
But Magnus not too stressed about that, given the score of this match. He now has the black side of this kind of Pierce-looking position where white's going to attack on the king side. This should be a fun, spicy one to kick things off in the bullet.
For sure. And Gukesh himself has been known to play this with the black pieces. This time he's on the receiving end of a modern. A great opening for bullet, honestly, because it's easy to rattle off a bunch of moves if you're black. There's kind of a stock queenside attack.
Yep.
And Magnus opting for the early trade. Ooh, I don't know about queenside castle here.
Yeah. You're walking in to the attack. But at this point, anything you can get that has double-edged chances, right? You want 3 result positions if you're Gukesh to give yourself a chance to get a victory. You might lose, but you still want those types of positions to give yourself any kind of fun, even if we're not talking about a comeback, right? Here comes E5 and F5 and launch the attack, young fella.
Yep, and I like Gukesh's speed in the early going. He's not overthinking it. He goes F5 and then E5. Oh, Magnus opens up the center. This looking mighty dangerous for black now.
Yep.
But bishop takes B5 is possible. I think knight takes B5 might be a move as well. But
Bishop
Magnus banking on...
Yeah, he doesn't go for either of those, but there was some spicy potential there.
Ooh.
Instead, he goes for the forcing
mate.
line, but Gukesh grabs a pawn.
And Gukesh could absolutely checkmate Magnus here. Oh, wait. Queen H6.
Queen H6 in the back. Oh, Magnus rolls his head. What
Knight
a move.
D5 to follow up. He goes knight E4.
By the way,
Couple
rook
more
takes
accurate moves
h6,
required.
allowed rook g8 mate. Sorry, pointing out.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it was important. But it's not totally over. I've seen crazier things happen in Bullet.
Yeah.
And Gukesh kind of imprecise to follow it up.
Yeah.
Oh, queen d1 and queen d5.
What's he allowing?
I thought Magnus should have traded queens. He wasn't expecting queen d2.
Gukesh is still up a piece. Let's let the record state, right? No, he maybe didn't follow up correctly, but he's still up a piece.
But there's a lot of forks here, and Magnus has quite a few pawns. So
Okay.
he's got to keep
Gukesh
his
has
composure
got
here,
to win this
Gukesh.
one.
Yeah, if he doesn't win this, that would be a travesty.
Yeah, bishop. You
Bishop
can just play
F1.
bishop f1 if you can.
Yeah,
just
keep all your pawns.
get greedy.
I don't know about that move. Magnus is going to start pushing his f pawn. Bishop.
This is you're suffering
king
from a little bit of
F6.
Magnus bias-itis, I
Oh,
think.
totally.
I think Gukesh is going to get this.
D3. No, but that's why.
Oh.
He's blundered his piece.
Oh no.
It's still winning. It's still completely winning.
Okay. He's got to check.
Push your a pawn.
No.
No.
It's
Knight d4.
It's going the
Oh
wrong
my
way.
God, he's losing all of his pawns, and here comes the f pawn. Oh, now it's anybody's game.
What is happening? What is
Oh my gosh,
happening?
King G7, and if A7, Rook A6.
Magnus is playing for the win.
Magnus is winning. No way this just happened. No. He's still in the game.
He can give up the h6 pawn for rook f8.
I think knight f5. But then the king moves and the bishop can step into b5.
Yeah.
So it's Gukesh now the one hanging by a thread. Wait,
Wait a
what?
second.
What did Magnus just do?
He had king
Knight
h7.
d4.
Why'd he take?
Knight c7? I don't understand anything that's happening here. It's
This
just
game-
literally nothing.
Okay, now Gukesh just simplifies. Those show you the nerves. He's like, I'll just give up my rook for
It's
the knight.
still
I
not
want-
over. Gukesh just
Yeah.
needs to find the right winning construction.
Okay.
D3.
Okay, he's got it with bishop d1.
Okay,
And
finally.
for the record- For the record, for those tuning in, Damaraju Gukesh has won 2 games in a row.
Yep. For the first time this match.
I'm just saying. What is that thing they do where they go like,
Just saying.
you know? Wasn't that a thing for a while where you just go like I thought, or is that like
You
a
know
new
my
Taylor Swift
relationship
meme going
to
around?
memes. Taylor Swift and meme. That is departing from my area of expertise quite drastically.
Any Hooters.
That was a ridiculous game.
Yeah.
I can't believe Magnus was winning there at the end. And he just gave up a rook.
Yeah, the chess karma equalized itself, though. It felt like poetic
For
justice
sure.
would be served. Gukesh should have won that game. I mean, Queen H6, come on. That was a beautiful move, right? You got to win that game.
Gukesh's mistake was not to follow up accurately. If he had played knight d5, the game ended immediately. You just can't give Magnus, multiple opportunities, even if you're up a piece against him. You got to try to finish him when you have the chance.
Well,
This
right
is
now
looking
he's at
ugly for Gukesh.
24 and a half minutes, just under 25 minutes, really, for Gukesh to mount the absolutely most improbable comeback in the history of the universe of all things.
Exactly.
But okay.
Hey, Gukesh wins this one. It's a 3-point streak.
3 points in a row.
Problem is he's not.
I
winning
feel
this
like
game.
I feel like I'm talking. I feel like I'm the manager in Major League, lecturing my team that like if you win again, that's called 2 in a row. If you win again, that's called a winning streak. And
that's
I know
called
we've never
regular
been there
move.
before yet, chat. But if we get 3 games in a row for Gukesh, that's called a winning streak.
And this is called losing the game.
Right now, it's not happening.
Nope. And
Not
there's
happening.
a mate that's going to be happening pretty soon. But Gukesh now trying to pull a Magnus from the previous
Yeah.
game, handling it down a
Defending.
piece. Knight f5, maybe? Wait, queen c6.
Put the queen on c6. It's not over. King
Magnus
h3 by Magnus says, I will unpin my bishop come hell or high water. Let's go.
And my rook. He unpins both pieces at the same time and puts his king on the safest square on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to find a way here. Bishop e5, queen e5, and queen h8 is an idea.
That would be fun. Back
And
right
there's
problem.
queen c8 check. Actually, that's easy to blunder in a bullet game. I think Magnus might be blundering it.
If he goes for this with queen h8, queen c8 check.
Queen c8 check.
Black
okay,
wins.
now I think he's seen it.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Did he go for that thinking he had it?
And that means his king is now once again kind of stuck in the danger zone.
Yeah.
But he's going to win.
Okay, no, he does get out of it. Yeah, that's a comment from featured chat I have to call out. Even an adoption by Gukesh winning 10 games in a row would not be enough to turn the tables in this match. I think
not even close to enough.
I think I can retire on that note. I mean, if adoption can't save it, who can save this little orphan kid over here?
Yeah, that's
Meaning
kind of
me.
a mic drop comment right there.
Yeah.
Aw.
All right. Well, Magnus does right the ship
you.
after losing 2 in a row. We will not have our first winning streak for the young Gukesh. We are back in our kind of Queen's Gambit looking position here. Moran ideas, advance the B pawn, push C5.
And you can try to farm some bullet rating off of Magnus. I mean, that is a juicy rating right there.
How about you're always thinking about farming that rating? You know?
Always. I can't switch it off. It's second nature.
You know, you got one thing on the brain, Danya, you always have.
It's that leaderboard. B4 and C3.
Chess.com leaderboard is calling. It wants its number 1 spot for Danya back.
Yeah, but bullet ratings, I mean, they swing wildly. And Magnus hasn't played too much bullet on chess.com, but maybe that'll change after this segment.
Yep. Well, it's been a lot of Title Tuesdays, a lot of blitz. Not a lot of bullet.
The Boulay. Boulay and Gukesh once again. Boulay.
Are you
it's
putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable?
Syllable, yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. Anya sees a 2900. First thing he thinks is farm.
All right.
It's an arable rating.
Is Gukesh getting his queen trap? You're just happy to see me. Oh, I thought bishop d6 was... Oh, queen e6. Yeah, okay, so he trades queens instead, converts to the endgame. Classic Magnus. Trade.
Yep.
Okay, now he's threatening to take twice and end up with 2 passed pawns on the queen side.
But the elephant in the room is that this pawn on c3 is eventually going to win the game because there's just no way to break up the pawn chain, and the knight's jumping into b5.
Ooh, you
unless
take A7.
You win b4.
Take a7 now. I think...
Yeah, no choice. I don't know what Gukesh is thinking about.
Take it.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. No, but he's completely
double
lost.
On the A file.
Look at
double
that
on
bishop
the A file.
on
Oh, you should have doubled first. Prevent rook A8.
Takes in rook AC8. Oh. Forcing the rook back. No, C2.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Goodbye.
Uh-oh. Ruh-roh.
Oh, no.
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
Ruh-roh. Magnus writes the ship in the bullet. And now he's up 2-1 in the bullet segment as well. Just kind of coasting.
Well,
the world champion.
we will likely have some exciting games here for the last few minutes. We will also likely have an interview with the world champion Magnus Carlsen, so you don't want to miss that. Don't go anywhere, of course. We have under 20 minutes now remaining in this match, and also remember the new rule this year. For the first time in SCC history, I finally relented and allowed the option to resign a match if you want. Before that, it was forced. I don't know that Gukesh will. I think he wants every single game he can get against the world champion. And I'm like Russell Crowe screaming, are you not entertained here? I'm happy to get more games no matter what the score is. But no matter what, we will have an interview with Magnus Carlsen, so don't go anywhere to see that.
Yeah, and as Gukesh should want every game possible against the world champion. It's just such a treat for anybody to face Magnus, and it's not in the greatest of circumstances here for Gukesh. He's not going to be happy with the score, but you always just get a rush from playing Magnus in any time control in any situation.
Yep.
And I think he's finishing the match.
I mean, I'd be looking at that score. I'd be thrilled, right? Okay, we're not talking about me here. I'd be like, I got 4 points. What, are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. I ain't going away.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he seems to be going away in this game. The knight potentially jumping into d6, forcing bishop f8. But Gukesh has this f4 square for his own horsey.
Okay.
Whoa! What is Magnus doing? That's a free knight. He just killed up the knight on f5. I don't need it.
I love when he raises his own hand. Like, I don't know what I was thinking there. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
I guess he wasn't expecting g6. This is still a little double-edged, though.
Danya, I don't know if this has been mentioned yet, but there hasn't been a single draw in this match.
Oh, that's nuts. I didn't stop to think about that. That's a great observation.
Only decisive games have been played in this match. Has that ever happened in the history of the Speedchess Championship? Stat Boy, yo, give me Vaughn.
That's right.
Give me Vaughn.
Our
Can I get
stats
Vaughn
team.
in here? Can I get Stat Boy? Can we get someone
What?
on that stat?
Oh, Gukesh has let this pawn slip into a7.
Uh-oh.
And to your point, Danny, I think the answer is no. I mean, if I had to bet, I would bet that the answer is no. That it's crazy for a match this long.
And we
without a
could
draw.
still get a draw. I mean, probably I'm jinxing it right now. Classic commentator
exactly.
Dan.
As we speak.
But that's kind of crazy.
It is. King F1. What's crazy is that Magnus might win this down a full piece.
We're not going to see a draw here.
If we see a draw in this game, that would be absolutely nuts. I would go F4. Okay, Magnus going after the piece.
Takes on F2. Where's the attack coming now, though? Got H3.
This could somehow fizzle out into a draw. I could see this getting into a perpetual.
It'd be hilarious if right when we call it mid-game, that game ends up being our first.
We have an end game. Bishop takes
We have an end game. We have an eval bar sliding back. Magnus back on the prowl.
No, but Gukesh has
deep
just
on
completely
runs.
Lost his mind here.
Donna is
Bishop
dancing
B5.
on D8. You know?
No draw. Donna, as in Donna Summer.
It's a problem. It's not Donna
Bishop
Summer.
F6.
Dirty dancing on D8. Take and Bishop C7 too. Oh, Bishop F6. Oh, that
Danny,
was sick.
King takes F6. D8 equals Bishop mate.
Mate.
If you please.
OMGs or snaps.
Please.
Under promoting to a bishop for mate.
Oh, G5 by Magnus, which
Okay,
is not
here
a
we
bad
go.
bullet line.
Here we go.
For the Alekhine.
Will we get a bong cloud? Can we get a poll for chat? Will we get a bong cloud before we're done here?
Who do you think he is? Jan Krzysztof Duda?
Jan Krzysztof Duda.
Krzysztof.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to correct you. Forgive me. I didn't mean to do it in front of still 15,000 people on Twitch and
please
do people on YouTube.
I love being corrected.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Right. Al Jogens
And another queen
defense.
trade.
Black. You have this G5. G5.
Okay, my
La Diasia Bosom.
Wow.
Chest.
Not bad.
You didn't know I spoke as much Russian as I do, did you?
I did not know you knew all the pieces and you know all the squares.
I have some little bit of vocabulary still left.
Do you know how to say F takes E6?
Biot is
beautiful. F biot E6.
Ошибка.
Or you can just say F4. Ошибка, very nice.
Ошибка.
Mistake.
All right, here we go.
Do you know how to say blunder?
I do. Just stop squeezing me on the spot. Ошибka's good enough. It means mistake. Leave me alone.
It's the same as the word for yawn.
Oh, really? Like you're tired? Like yawning?
Yeah, there's a funny story. My coach told me an old guy was playing. I don't know if this is like apocryphal or what. An old guy was playing a game, and he was so sleepy he yawned so widely that he had a problem with his jaw and had to be transported to the hospital. And when he woke up, the doctor told him, "Well, you're in the hospital because you yawned." And literally in Russian, he said, "What did I yawn?" Because it's the same as "What did I blunder?"
I get it. I love it.
Hilarious, I know. Everybody's
this is like
the
old proverb of sacrificing a knight. What is it? You come to like the crossroads and you either have to lose a knight or like choose death or something. What is going on with those knights? I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah,
someone was talking to me about their feelings. I wasn't really paying attention.
In the meantime, Magnus has slipped in another victory, so still no draw.
Luka Doncic style with that Euro step with the Knights moving in. That's my new thing. Is I was watching Luka Doncic dominate my Suns last night. Bit of a Luka fan here, despite him consistently dominating my Suns. He plays on chess.com every day.
Wait, your kids are in the NBA?
Shout out to Luka playing on chess.com every day. But I was watching Luka dominate my Suns.
Wait. He does?
Yeah.
Luka Doncic plays on chess.com?
Did you not even see his interview from a couple weeks ago?
I did not.
Yeah, and they asked him if he's following the Twitter collapse of Elon Musk, and he said, "I play chess on my phone."
Wow.
But, so Luka plays chess on chess.com, but he also dominates the Suns for a living for breakfast And I was watching him do a Euro step, and I was like, "That's like a knight move, bruh." So I'm bringing it in. I'm bringing sexy back. I'm bringing Luca into every chess match.
Golf clap. Exactly.
Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
Here we go. Magnus has the white pieces here in a Rosalimo. A rather
Rosalimo.
dignified opening for a bullet game. They went from Alekhine with G5 to like a mainstream Rosalimo.
Yep. And I don't even know what to make of this pawn structure. Those double D pawns are dirty. You can take it if you're Magnus. You can. Okay, he does. I was gonna say you could
There's
also
only
just
going to be
leave
one
it
D
there.
pawn. And there's going to be no E pawns after Gukesh finishes taking it.
Oh, the knight comes into F5. Black is up a pawn, though, so I don't exactly know how that happened. I was too busy talking about Luka Doncic, but Black is up a pawn.
97 check, by the way, is a possibility for Magnus as a way to try to get to that bishop on E5. This game might be the closest we've come to a draw. I have a feeling that they might get some sort of liquidation.
Yeah? Okay. Will we have the first ever SCC match in history without a draw? He says before checking stats. I asked for Vaughn. Give me stat boy. Check on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
He says before all the pieces get traded and we get a draw.
Or will we have a blunder? That
This is
A6
still a
pawn is
double-edged
weak.
endgame. Yeah,
That
it's
A6
a
pawn is
two
weak.
result. It's a 3-result game for sure.
Yeah, bishop coming to D3. I don't know. We're getting a draw.
I think Magnus is going to pull this one out again. Bishop D3. Here you go. You called it. Oh, bishop B3.
Oh, he goes back. He can do. Ooh, rook F6. Very nice.
What about
Rook,
that twist?
Okay, he's going to put the king on D4.
And that